expectations that are unreal or nothing but photos of giant fish in beautiful places. And we're hoping that if you're watching this, you're ready to collect information and start to make some decisions on, what trip or if one of these trips is right for you. And what we do well here at Reds is we try to take all the stress of like researching a destination and letting you play, roulette or gamble with your hard-earned money and getting on an airplane and winding up in some foreign country just hoping it's a good trip. So our goal is to just get you informed, get questions answered, and just really pile on like the critical information that you need to know to do one of these trips. And I'll run through. I'll do about half the destinations today, and a couple of the other guys that have expertise, and the other ones will handle the other ones. But what we want to do is we want to run through like just kind of some background information about each destination for a few minutes and answer like just really critical questions, and then we want to leave time at the end. And we really encourage you guys to type in questions like throughout the seminar, and we'll kind of let those pile up. And please ask like hard questions, technical questions, and we will let those kind of build up, and then we'll hit those kind of in the back end of the seminar. So just make sure and jump on those, pile in your questions, and yeah, just get those in. And so there will be kind of a hopper of questions towards the end that we have. And I'll do a screen share here in just a second, and we'll do a screen share here in just a second, and I'll kind of run through. So we'll start with Ascension Bay, Mexico today. I've been to Ascension Bay 10 times. It's an awesome destination. Uh, in the last several years, I've kind of gallivanted around doing different stuff, and I'm really excited to be going back to Ascension Bay again this spring because it's such a neat fishery. And there are also some flight logistics that have changed there that for me makes it just a very really a feasible and easy trip. So I'm going to jump into a screen share, and then use your keyboard if anything is not looking quite right in screen share. Just let me know. But we should be sharing Ascension Bay here, and I'll just run through just a handful of the slides, and we're going to cover background information, and then we'll just do some Q&A. So Ascension Bay is great. You can wade fish, you can boat fish. There's a whole bunch of different species that we'll talk about. So you're going to get to see an enormous variety of different species and different water types from, ankle deep or shin deep flats for bonefish, all the way to lagoons and mangrove lagoons and things like that. Now, when are we going? So we go anywhere from January through April, and we have not seen much of a difference. In fact, I think I need to make an adjustment. Is that 2025 trip with Max full, Eric? Okay, January's full. Okay, so we in the last like 48 hours, we booked that January one full. So we've got April 5th, about halfway booked. So I think we've got 3 or 4 spots in that one. So April is considered the kind of the peak time or the high times. So theoretically, those are the more optimal dates. We're getting a little bit more consistent weather. It's a little bit warmer in April, and a lot of times the wind will lay down in April. And once we get into June, we've done trips in June, but we kind of have a threat of more intense storms in June, like June through September, October. You can get more intense storms, although it does get warmer. So we've got space open in April. That's a ways out yet, so we don't know which one of us is going to be hosting that one. But just know that when we're hosting trips like this and we're traveling alongside you, you're not paying any more for that. Our arrangement is with the lodge. They don't have a marketing budget. They're not going to go to a trade show. They don't even run a website. We've been fishing with the same lodge since 2010, and they rely on just good, solid repeat business with folks like us, and they run just a super program. So where's Ascension Bay? We'll talk about flights real quick, and then we'll jump over to Google Earth, and I'll actually show you where it is physically. But there's a new flight into Tulum, which makes the logistics much more streamlined if you can fly in and out of Tulum. But let's look at Google Earth here, and we'll start at Punta Allen, and we'll kind of work out, and I'll give you just a broad sense of where in the heck we're talking about. And we're going to look at the Yucatan Peninsula is here. You got Cuba over here, just, short distance to the east. And if we really zoom out, we can look at Mexico here with the Yucatan Peninsula, one of the most world famous, fly fishing destinations on the planet. It's just everywhere from Campeche over here to Ascension Bay, down into Belize. So we're about 60 miles north of Belize, and this is Ascension Bay right here. Now, historically, we flew into Cancun, and we had to drive about 5 hours south, and we have to go down this little tiny peninsula that you can see right here. And you've got water on both sides, and it's just a long drive from Cancun. That's part of what keeps Punta Allen special. It's a very remote village. Punta Allen is home to the Palometa Club, Ascension Bay Bonefish Club, the Grand Slam Club, El Pescador, Cay Fishing Lodge, Ascension Bay Lodge, and Casa Viejo Chalk, which is the lodge we've been with since 2010. It's kind of one of the OG fly fishing lodges there. But yeah, Ascension Bay, as far as fishing goes, kind of the famous part of Ascension Bay is going to be in the south end, down around the Tres Marias, the Santa Rosa Lagoon. Vihia Grande is often milky, but if you can get into Vihia Grande, it's just super cool. And there's lots of different lagoons and channels, and just a network of mangrove lagoons down here in the south end of Ascension Bay. So you could be out here fishing permit down around the Tres Marias, um, for a part of the day, and then you could jam up into some of these lagoons or channels down here and fish for tarpon the other half of the day. And for those that have been there before, you've certainly fished around Snake Island right here, which is kind of the primary opening for Ascension Bay right here. So that's geographically where it's at. What's changed is we're now able to land in Tulum. And for me, that was a pretty big deal, just coming all the way from the Northwest, being able to land a couple hours closer, and the timing on those flights makes it so that we can get into the lodge and have dinner at the lodge that first night. So fly from wherever you're at to Tulum, and it's about 2.5 hours from Tulum down, and then a lot of the times if the weather's nice, we'll jam back in the boat and get picked up at Boca Pila. And we arrange all of the ground transfer. It's all shared group transportation, and the group transportation's all rolled in, included in the cost of the trip price. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at as far as like just general geographic location there. On Google Earth, it is. Okay, well, it was black. We know that for the next one, but apparently, thanks Cody for texting me. But we'll work that out. Apparently, there's some quirks to what we can stream and what we can't stream. So we'll just move on here. But the flights into Tulum changed everything. Now, what are we fishing for in Ascension Bay? So there's the Grand Slam species. We got bonefish, permit, tarpon, snook, barracuda. In addition, there's a lot of stuff that we've caught that we don't even list here, but we've had jacks and lemon sharks, ladyfish. We've caught a couple of cobia, triple tail, various snapper, little blue runners, lots of little miscellaneous stuff. But okay, yeah, we'll just kick it back one more time here. And okay, we're good now. No slide still, huh? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll just do it old school, without the screen shares. But as far as species go, and I love the questions coming in, like keep those coming. I mean, that was kind of the idea of it. So we're fishing for, we've got permit. We'll show you the slideshow the old fashioned way. We've got permit is kind of like the most famous species, I'd say. But the bonefish are great. That's a very average bonefish. A 5-pounder is exceptional in Ascension Bay. I guess I need to show my camera, not my screen. Tarpon. Okay, we're going to get some of those. That's the Grand Slam. You want a super Grand Slam? You're going to get some snook. All right. But it doesn't stop there, folks. We're going to get barracuda. I'm glad I printed this out. There's fantastic Jack Crevalle, man. They fight like trucks. Those things are absolutely outstanding. And we've got lemon sharks and all sorts of kind of miscellaneous stuff. Now, before we hit the questions, I'll maybe head a couple of those off of the pass. Our fishing is going to be 2 anglers and 2 guides in a boat. So we've got a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really handy for when we spot a school of bonefish, we spot a permit. 1 guide and 1 angler can actually get out of the boat, go over and do the spot and stock, and put a ground assault on those fish that we're seeing there. So the 1-to-1 is great. There will be like 1 highly experienced guide in each boat, and then the other guide is sometimes highly capable. Is sometimes just another captain that has an availability or day off, and he'll go team up to make a few bucks and go as well. But usually it's just an apprentice or a junior guide who's there to help manage the boat, an extra set of eyes in the boat, help manage that boat when we're running it through lagoons or tight channels where we have to chop some mangroves or things like that out of the way. So, but we'll have a 1-to-1 ratio in the boats actually, which is really, really handy. So you'll have 1-to-1. The boats are 23-foot panga boats. We got a poling deck in the back, big casting deck on the front, and with so many different species there, whether you're on the deck of the boat in Ascension Bay or not, really doesn't matter that much, because if another species pops up that you're not necessarily looking for, whoever is in the back seat is ready with that other rod. So for instance, if you're looking for permit and a barracuda pops up, the dude with the CUDA rod just jumps up and grabs that CUDA rod, throws a shot at that CUDA, and that's going to happen kind of all day long, kind of that trade-off of who's on deck, who's what we call in the hole. So that's one of the neatest things about Ascension Bay. As far as gear goes, I've got kind of a list like here. We try to break this up because people are like, hey, I want to go on the trip, for instance, but I don't want to buy 5 rods and a bazillion flies and stuff. We can counsel you through what we call kind of the bare essentials to do these trips, or like what we call the well-prepared angler. And most people wind up somewhere in between, but like at a minimum in Ascension Bay, you need an 8 to 9 weight rod that's preferably a saltwater specific rod, just so it's tough, with a tropical floating line, a couple dozen flies, some bonefish and permit leaders, and you can go down, you can target bonefish and permit. You bring a spool of 40-pound shock tippet, you can hit some snook and some baby tarpon. You can do it all with 1 rod. Most people, if they've done the trip a couple times, they're either going to kind of team up with their boat partner and make sure to have a 10 weight in the boat for barracuda, potentially some migratory tarpon as well, is also nice to have that heavier rod. So the well-prepared angler is probably going to have about 3 rods that are set up with different leader and fly configurations, just kind of ready to go. If I had to choose 3 flies, the 3 flies that I would personally choose would be Casablanca crab. And what we'll do is we'll end up following up these seminars with a blog and include our PDFs just so you can see what notes we're talking from, and you'll actually have links to these. But Casablanca reghead crab for permit, bonefish butta for bonefish, and then smelling salts for tarpon. Those would be my 3 top flies for Ascension Bay. So let me start hitting some of the questions. Most of the comments aren't questions. They're just telling me what a crappy job I'm doing with the live stream, which is fair. That's okay. Go ahead and chat in any questions you have, but I'll just follow up by saying, as far as booking, like doing one of these trips, as far as like what happens in the booking process, a lot of these are going to fill in the next few days. People are ready to make their winter plans, ready to commit, but like, I can't implore you enough, like booking a hosted trip with Reds, like when one of us is there with you, like we have eyes on the outfitting operation. We know if things are happening efficiently, if they're happening like they normally do. And if there's members of the group that need a little kick in the pants, just to make sure that they're ready to go in the morning, they're not costing anybody fishing time, that people understand how to like provide good boat etiquette amongst fishing partners. We lecture and chat about that like in the evenings. We teach knot tying clinics in the evenings. We try to set an evening aside early in the week to do a casting and presentation seminar. We'll do Zoom seminars just with the groups that are going, so that you're mic'd up, you're on camera, you're asking questions, and we have kind of our group unity. And then for saltwater trips in January, we will actually do an on-site saltwater rendezvous, so that we actually meet together at our lodge here. It's included in the cost of your trip, and we just spend a whole day going through, hey, how fast do we strip for permit? How do we fish for bonefish? What kind of leader builds are we having? And we want to make sure that we want to knock it out of the park for you. I mean, it's we have an interest in making sure you have an absolutely great time. And the other thing about hosting is, a lot of times on these trips, like if you book independently with a lodge, most of the time people are going to have a great experience. You go with a booking agent, a yellow dog, or a fly water. Those folks are great. They know a lot of stuff, but they book so much travel, they don't have the ability to host every trip and be present watching what happens on every trip. We go on every trip. And as I said at the beginning of the seminar, that's just comp by the lodge. They want to bring a big full group down and have one of us there to help manage the group and organize the schedule. It takes a huge burden off of them, and they know if those groups have a better time, they're much more likely to rebook. So it's a great system. And if there's a short straw, like a boat motor breaks down, a guide is sick or something like that, the host is the first person to take the short straw and then figure out how to equitably manage that across all parties. And then what I was getting to about just booking direct, say you just show up at the lodge. If you show up at the lodge, it's your first time there, and there are guests in that lodge that have been going there for years. I will guarantee you the guests that have been going there for years are going to gobble up the more experienced guides, and any precious or unique opportunities that are happening that week are by default going to go to those repeat guests. Whereas on a hosted trip, we're rotating all of those special and unique opportunities and just making sure that it's diluted equitably across everybody there. And we want every person, whether it's their first time or their 10th time, to have a super trip with us. So those are some of the reasons. I implore you to look at the hosted gig. You book with us, you pay your deposit with us, you immediately get emailed all the information that you need to know. And you're going to hear some of this again if you stay on, kind of on and off throughout the day for the other destinations too. But we run an app for your phone that all of the information you need to know, fly lists, packing lists, flights, where to be and when, the overall itinerary, lodge information, is there Wi-Fi, is there laundry service, et cetera, et cetera. All of that's contained in the app. We build out a week for every destination that we do, so it's live updated. If we make changes to things, it's all live. Whereas we can't unsend an email that when there's an update to the itinerary, the packing list, but we can feed it right to your phone. And we've worked very hard on making sure that we're operating the best absolute best travel service that we can, because we don't do as much of it as a lot of the travel specific companies. So we're there, boots on the ground every time. uh so we'll hit a couple of questions here. So VT a bullet says, what are the three weighted rods you'd bring? 8, 10, and what else? If I were doing it myself, I'd say an 8, 9, and a 10. My 8's my bonefish rod. Maybe it's getting used for snook if I'm doing kind of a snook specific afternoon or day. The 8 weight's good for flipping stuff up under the canopy. A lot of time those snook are going to be, really tight and kind of buried within those mangroves. And so we want to make sure that we've got a rod that's delicate enough to kind of skip unweighted flies up under the mangroves. My 9 weight's probably going to wear a permit crab on the end of it, all week. Permit are going to be found in more open, exposed water, so you're going to be more susceptible to the wind when targeting permit um, than any other fish. And some of the crabs are pretty heavily weighted. It's that 9 just has that line has a little more a little bit more mass to it. So all that junk, in that permit crab, I've heard permit crabs jokingly called two quarters glued together. It's just they're pretty dense sometimes. That 9 weight has a little extra but isn't over the top. And I fished permit with 8s, 9s, and 10s, but I'd say 9 weight would be my permit rod, and then my 10 weight is going to probably be suited up with a wire leader and a needlefish or a popper for barracuda most of the time, unless we have kind of a tarpon specific afternoon, or there are opportunities for tarpon in open water, or the guides have been reporting migratory tarpon, in which case my 10 weight can easily just be swapped out to just a straight piece of 40 or 60 pound shock tippet, to be locked and loaded for tarpon. So there, the rod selection thing, like, I don't, the brands and stuff like that doesn't have a profound impact on your success. But having a couple of rods rigged up and just ready, especially between two boat partners that know each other, like, hey, like, why don't you cover the 10, and we'll make sure we've got that, and I'll make sure we each have a couple of 8s. That way, if we want to jump out of the boat and walk some really shallow lagoons for bonefish, we've each got our own rods. But you can kind of crowdsource some of the heavier rods specifically for barracuda and stuff if you got a good boat partner that you trust to cast the rods. The hunt for success says the non-fishing option if wife wants to tag along. It's a good question. We should have private conversation about that, just so I can kind of, like, really get into the nuances of it. But I would say Ascension Bay is not a great non-angler option unless that non-angler, often a non-angling spouse, if they want to be with you in the boat every day, it's a fine destination for that, because the Sion Con biosphere is amazing as far as wildlife. You've got flamingos and spoonbills and frigate birds and some crocodiles, and occasionally a manatee, and it's just beautiful. It's a national marine preserve. It's incredible as far as the just the eco tour aspect of it. But the town of Punta Allen doesn't really offer a lot after one day of spending in town. It's a neat town, but spending time in town's not going to be something. There's just a lot of superior places for that. So if it's non-angler, they're just going to have to pay angler rate and be in the boat with you each day, which is just still super fun. There's no harm there, but I think there's better places to do some non-angling options. I mean, Baja, without a doubt, in my opinion. My wife likes to roll with me on trips, and we haven't done Ascension Bay yet. Like I said, I've been 10 times, and she hasn't made it yet. And she's an angler, and I just think there's better options. She's an angler about 70% of the days we go. Next question is going to be, if you bring 4 rods, what would you add? And the 4 rods would probably be 2 8-weights, just so that I've got a backup 8-weight. I think would make sense to me, because those are a little bit more fragile. And if you're going to have a backup 8-weight, if you're going to break a rod, it's likely going to be an 8-weight. So having a backup makes a lot of sense to me. So, and if you guys have fishing specific questions, like what's my number one tip for permit, like, that would be like a really great question to throw at me. We'll do those types of questions. Those are going to be more tactical when we break up and actually do the Zoom calls, kind of within the group. So, yeah, if you want to get booked, it's as easy. Like I said, I wouldn't drag your feet too long. You can call us at the shop. We're answering the phone behind us all day. Eric, that's right there. He's waving his hand. Eric, that's right there. He manages the our travel desk, and so he takes the bookings. You can email Eric at Reds if you want to grab one of these spots for the April 5th week in Ascension Bay. But the booking process and the deposits and stuff are all, like, it's so stupid easy and stress free. It's it's so stupid easy and stress free. All right, what's my top tip for permit from Ken? Ken, shoot them right between the eyes, dude. You got to play to win with those permit. Every permit that never sees your fly doesn't get caught, man. Like, I've spent too many times being careful. You can take one careful cast at a permit, and if it doesn't see it, doesn't eat it, shoot them right between the eyes and play to win on those things, because you'll regret it. Because even casts that are loose from those fish, something's going to go wrong. You're going to snag yourself in the back of the head. You're going to hit your crab on your rod tip, and you're going to wish you just gone for the kill shot, kind of right off the bat. And oh, it looks like Mac's on here now. Yeah, Mac, sorry for all the chaos, but I didn't set up the streaming settings quite right on the first link or two, so we got it done right now. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Bobby Miller, and Bob's going to jump on here, and he's going to run through Q&A for Christmas Island. So we can take kind of 1 minute timeout. I'll get Bob briefed on how the computer's working. So hang tight for just a second, and we'll go from there. Yeah, go for it. What's up, guys? It's Bob here at Reds. Headset on, unmute. Oh, I got to do the headset. There we go. Okay. What's up, guys? It's Bob. Yeah, Red's Fly Shop. This is Bob. How may I help you? All right. So Christmas Island talk. Let's go. So I don't know. A lot of people have probably been or have looked into it. We like going to Christmas Island. I like going to Christmas Island a lot. Went this year, went last year. There was a bit of a hiatus there through the pandemic, but we're glad to be going back there. So that's pretty cool. If you have any questions, definitely hit the chat. I'll try to grab those as they come. We'll see if I can't figure out how to share my screen and not have it go black here. So share screen. Okay, can you guys see that? If it's black, let me know. So Christmas Island, let's jump right into it. Here is the island. That's the picture out of the plane window. Pretty cool. Endless flats, right? Here is kind of a track that I laid when I was fishing there the last time. So as you can see, we've got this big lagoon. The big lagoon is where we're going to go fishing is the inside here. These are all the bonefish flats, that kind of stuff. We're fishing all this stuff easily accessible from the boat. When you hear people talk about driving around the outside of the island to go fish the Korean wreck, that's this purple line. You're going all the way around the island. You're going all the way down to the bottom tip. And that's where there's not actually a wreck, but that is what people refer to as the Korean wreck. So you're fishing outside of the island out there. You're going to run into some different species, things like that. Quite a long truck ride. It's like 2 hours. And then the other option there in Christmas Island, which we'll delve into a little bit more of all of this stuff, but the other option is fishing outside of the lagoon, and that's blue water fishing. So you're trolling for tuna, wahoo, rainbow runners, things like that. Kind of fun, kind of a break, I would say. You can do that as a day trip or as like a half day trip. And I can see Joe's on my computer back there chatting in as me. Pretty funny. Anyway, so the one thing I meant to mention and I forgot, but so we fly to Honolulu first, and then it's about a 3-hour flight, almost due south to the island, and that is near the right near the equator. So the weather's the same year round. Okay, so quick question from Greg. Any problems with the fish pond rod and reel case? I've not had any problems.
Fiji is very particular. They have weird rules about how heavy the carry-on can be, things like that. On one of my trips to Christmas Island, some of the guys' check bags did not come. So we encourage you to carry on like a full set of gear. Some of the people that go, Ed, if you're watching, like wore his boots, I think, and his flat sneakers to make sure he had them, which at the time I thought, man, that was a little silly, but when he had them and the other guys didn't, he seemed pretty smart. So anyway, I've not had a problem though with the fish pond carry on, or like the Sims one either. So no problems there. Okay, moving on. So we're gonna just get right into the nitty gritty. Like, what do you need to bring, right? What does the setup look like? Christmas Island is known as a bonefish fishing destination. There's lots of them. They are big, and they are fairly unintelligent. I mean, they're spooky. They're bonefish. They're always gonna be that way. But you can get away with running 16-pound leader, 20-pound leader even. So anywhere from a 7 to a 9 weight. A lot of guys that go to Christmas Island like a 9 weight just because you can have windy conditions. And so that's kind of a basic setup there. Your 8 weight that you already have is going to be fine. I caught that fish. That was on an Asquith 7 weight. And that was a big bonefish. Christmas Island flies. Christmas Island specials, man. I mean, you can get those in a variety of weights and sizes, like the bead chain eyes versus the lead eyes. Some different sizes, anywhere from 4, 6, and 8. I tend to like the bead chain eyes. I think they land a little lighter. The guides seem to like the lead eyes, and I think it's because they can see where it lands, because it does splash just a little bit. No, Greg, good question. For a long time, Fiji Airlines, maybe they're still saying this, says you need a vaccination card to prove that you're vaccinated to get there. I never had to show it. I was there like the month after it reopened. We never had to show it. You do have to sign like a little affidavit that you haven't been sick or a fever in the last week or two before the flight, but that's it. And you just sign that on the flight. Okay. Just some bonefish fishing tips for Christmas Island. There are big schools of bonefish for sure. Seems like the big schools will often have the slightly smaller fish, and then you'll find the twosies, the foursies, those like smaller schools, or even singles will be bigger fish. So anyway, when you get into a school of the small ones, try to be casting at the edges, because if you cast right in the middle, you could spook the whole thing. But if you fish at the edges and pull them away from the rest of the school, you can keep fishing to that same school over and over and over. And then move slowly. Like when you're walking with the guides, you're going to be moving almost at times. You're like, man, how slow are we going? And sometimes you just stand and wait. And, it's crazy because like you'll be standing somewhere and looking for minutes, and then something about the sun changes, and all of a sudden you can see a fish that was right there the whole time. You just never saw it. So you move too quick, you end up bumping a lot of fish. And so anyway, go slow, take your time, and spend a lot of time looking. The guides are good. They can see obviously better than we can because they live there and they're used to it. And then, the other thing I'd say is you're waiting the whole time, right? This trip is all waiting. You're never fishing out of the boat. So line management is a big deal. You're going to have, potentially most of the fly line, at your feet that you've been casting. And, it's easy to stand on it or get it all tangled up. The guides will sometimes kind of help you out by managing your line, but that's for sure the angler's responsibility. These bonefish, you're going to set on them, and then basically you just let go. Let them run. They're going to take a lot of line. Something about being on the flats with them you're at a lower level than when you're up in a boat. They seem to run further, I would say, because of that, and you don't have quite the same leverage pulling up on them like you do when you're in a boat. So these fish are going to run. And the big ones will run clean into your backing. I mean, 4 times maybe. So line management is a big one. All right, the other big one that people go to Christmas Island for is GTs, right? Christmas Island is a fantastic GT spot. People talk about like going to the Seychelles and stuff, and no doubt that's incredible. I've never been. I think they probably have bigger ones there, but the travel to get there and the price of the trip, you can't beat Christmas Island. It's very accessible. It's easy one. So for GTs, you're looking at 11 or a 12 weight. You want just straight fluorocarbon, maybe 6 feet of that. And then plenty of gel spun backing. These GTs are going to take you on one big run typically. And then after that, you're kind of just winching them in. They're so broad, right? They've got a lot of like surface area pushing against the water. So they really are going to try to stay where they're at. And then as you can see on this fish that I caught, with that big pectoral fin, I mean, they're incredible. They're like a fighter jet. I mean, they're just coming in like all of a sudden. It is crazy. And you'll see them singles. You'll see packs of them. Like when I caught that one, I think there was about 7 of them. And you're just, they're all different sizes. You can't really decide, oh, I'm going to cast at the big one. You're just casting in front of the pack. It happens so fast. And then strip fast, set the hook, bury the hook, and then they're just going to go for it, right? Flies, I like the dark colored flies. The guides seem to like the more naturals, the tan and whites, the kind of herring, baby bonefish types. So there's some different options there. You probably don't need too many GT flies. You're not going to lose them. If you're losing them, you're losing big GTs, and that would be a big bummer, right? People also talk about like having a backup GT line, and that for sure is a thing. They can, go down. They want to go down and rub you against coral, and they'll just break the line off. That's why a lot of these GT lines, especially that have come out lately, are all built on a stronger core, and that's not because the fish pulls so hard. It's because they're less likely to break if you get raked against the coral or a rock or something like that. Okay. I've always used the welded loops that are just on the fly line. Like you go to the Seychelles, those guys, they like when you get there, they cut that loop off and tie on their own. So, I mean, that's up to you guys, right? But yeah, I mean, these ones that I've got here, the black brushy, this is a purple and black brushy. There's another one called a magnetic minnow that's not listed here. A popper is also good. You can blind cast with poppers. And I've never caught a big one doing that, but I've caught a variety of kind of medium sized little ones, right? Just blind casting with a popper. The big ones that I have caught, you see them coming, right? You're not blind casting. Certainly, you can blind cast, and I have spent a lot of time blind casting. But the ones that I have successfully caught and landed, I've seen coming. Yeah. Oh, the leader to fly knot for GT. So, yeah, I just use a Homer Rhodes loop knot. There's a variety of knots that you could use, but that's the one I like. You want to use a loop knot. Okay, tips for GTs, kind of like I'm describing. You're just going to wait till you see one, right? And that's sitting and waiting in a likely spot. Maybe you've got a pinch point where there's current pushing over a flat, which is really cool. If you hit the tide right, and the guide will know, like, oh, if we wait here, the tide's going to push over, and that's going to carry bait fish, and then these GTs will cruise. That's a good one. Sometimes the guides they'll like kick their legs, and they'll kind of splash around and dance and stuff, and make a lot of noise in the water, and that can actually bring them in because they're such predatory fish. You'll see like crashing bait fish. Maybe you see that on the edge of a flat, and then you have to run over there, right? Because there might be a GT around that's pushing those bait fish, right? And then the last one there is a good one. Nothing swims towards a GT, right? So when you see them, you need to get it cast in front of them and then be stripping away from the GT, right? Because it looks unnatural if you kind of foul a cast and that fly swims towards them, right? They're not going to eat it. And they're so fast. I mean, it's not uncommon for you to cast and they're coming for it. They're trying to eat your fly and they miss, and they'll come back a couple times. They're so aggressive. As you can see from some of these pictures here, a lot of those fish were caught with the lighter, silver and whites, tan and white colored flies. So those for sure work. I just seem to like the dark colored flies. They're obviously really fun if you get the opportunity to do that. A lot of the other like most common question I think about Christmas Island is, do you carry two rods with you when you're walking the flats? The guide might not always be with you. A lot of times the guide will carry your second rod for you, right? Which is nice. But if you're like dedicated to go GT fishing, I think you should go GT fishing, right? And maybe you ask the guide in the morning, hey, what's the best time of day? And so you spend the afternoon GT fishing, and then in the morning you're bonefish fishing or whatever. If the tide is right in the afternoon, you leave the bonefish rod aside, or guys will carry them on their backpack. You'll figure out a way to strap them to your backpack, which is good. There's some different tricks and stuff there. So you can certainly carry two rods, but it's so hard to switch, right? If you see a GT, uh, it's almost too late to switch, right? But maybe you're walking a flat and you're like, oh, this is a likely GT spot. I'm going to switch my rods. I'll put my bonefish rod up. I'll grab my GT rod and I'm going to carry that for the next hour. Right. So in that regard, it's nice to have two rods, but it is really hard to switch, and make a good shot. It can be done, but it is tough for sure. Okay, so moving on to some of the other species. Triggerfish is another kind of popular quarry, I would say, out there on the flats. They're kind of like a permit in that they're really spooky. They're hard to catch. They reject your fly a lot. There's like 3 different kinds. And the peach face is the bigger one that you see in the picture here. That's kind of the more common. And these guys they'll be tailing, right? You'll see their tail above the water. I mean, they're really easy to see. So pretty fun I like to fish for them. Some of the guys don't even want to waste their time because they're so picky and they're hard to catch. A lot of times like a 9 weight. And if you're really going for them, 20 or 30 pound leader, you can catch them on your bonefish stuff, but man, they fight hard. And immediately when you hook them, what they want to do is they want to go down into a coral hole, and they'll break you off every time. Excuse me. They'll break you off every time in that coral hole. So you want to try to keep them away from that hole. So that's why you like to use that heavier leader, so you can put some pressure on them, right? And crab flies. Oh, next slide. Crab flies. There we go. Crab flies, bonefish flies, bigger, stronger hooks, the better. I mean, look at the teeth on this guy here. They've got gnarly teeth. They'll bend a hook, they'll break a hook. I've even heard if you put your like forceps in their mouth, they'll bend your forceps. So you definitely don't want to put your fingers in there to unhook them. But yeah, those are kind of a challenging fish and just something else to try while you're there. So yeah, there's some of the tips. I kind of went over those. Really spooky and hard to catch. But like I say, it's kind of a fun one. You can spend a little bit of time doing that. You get on a certain flat, and there might just be 100 triggerfish. You see their tails, and for whatever reason on that particular flat, there's a bunch of them. You go to the next one, it's all bonefish. Okay. The blue water fishing. So some guys really like it. You kind of need a whole boat worth of people to go do it. So that's 4 people. You control flies. Trolling gear rods is certainly more effective because you're getting down deep. It's nice because you're going to catch some fresh tuna likely, and then you're going to bring that back to the lodge, and you can have fresh sashimi appetizers and tuna for dinner and stuff like that. So it's nice in that regard. The food in Christmas Island is not particularly luxurious, so having some fresh tuna, day 3 or 4 tastes pretty good. Um, and you don't have to go out for a full day. The last time I was there, or 2 times ago, I guess. We went out for a half day. That young fella caught that tuna, and it hadn't been very productive for us. So we're like, man, let's just go back. It's still before lunch. We went back to the lodge. We changed out gear. We went fishing on the flats, and I caught a GT that afternoon. So you don't have to necessarily spend all day, but you sure can. So blue water fishing, and you're trolling, right? I mean, this is kind of a nice like break. You're on your feet all day long. You're walking 4 to 8 miles a day, probably just standing all day on the flats. So by day 3 or 4, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a break and sit in the boat and relax and do some trolling if you're into that kind of thing. The other one I should mention, sometimes you hear about guys doing this, especially if you've got someone on the trip that's brought spinning rods, is you can also anchor the boat like in a channel in the lagoon and cast like with poppers with a spinning rod. Some guys have had good luck doing that. I've not done that, but that's kind of another boat fishing activity if you are a gear fisherman. Okay, just some of the other species you catch. You'll catch the blue trevallies, which is this one here on the right. And they don't get as big as a GT. I mean, a big one would be maybe like that. But man, they fight hard and they just come zipping in and out. They'll take your bonefish fly. They'll take smaller, streamer bonefish, baby bonefish patterns, things like that. This other one is a striped trevally or a golden trevally, people call them. And those are more like eating your bonefish fly, more like on accident, or if you'll see them, you can cast at them, but more like you're just hooking those on accident. But kind of fun to catch. There's a variety of other species that you'll see. This first one is a goatfish. He's got that little goat beard. You'll just catch those guys on accident on the flats. This is a surgeon fish in the middle. They don't really take the fly, so you'll see them and they're really frustrating. You can't really hook them. And then this really colorful one, that's a wrasse. And that one I got out on the Korean wreck out on the outside of the island. You'll run into these other species on the outside of the island. I've seen parrotfish. They catch those in the Seychelles. I've never really heard of anyone catching them in Christmas Island. But you'll see a variety of these other kind of reef type fish out on the outside of the island. And then just some kind of basic tips communicating with the guide. Their English is obviously their second language. And so it's good at the beginning of the day, take a few casts. Hey, how far is this? That kind of thing. Cause they're going to be telling you, hey, 40 feet, 1 o'clock, and 1 o'clock is going to be, if you're looking straight ahead, that's noon, right? So 1 o'clock is off to the right. Each guide is going to be a little different. 30 feet might be 40 feet to one of the guides. So kind of setting that up. They all know how to use an iPhone or whatever. If you have a camera, familiarize them with that. And then if you really want to do something like I want to go fish for GTs, sometimes you have to kind of push them a little bit and say like, do you understand? And then, yes, okay, we're going to go fish for GTs, right? And then lastly, it's a long trip. It's a lot of walking. They're long days. You're leaving at like 7. You don't get back till 5. It's long days. So don't overdo it and don't be afraid to take a day off if you're tired by the end of the trip. And some of the days might be cloudy, might be windy. So don't kill yourself. Don't get bummed out. There's more days to go fishing, and you're bound to have a nice sunny day. The clouds just make it harder to see the fish, of course. You're going to miss up, you're going to miss fish, you're going to lose fish, but there's plenty more of them to be had. So that's kind of the quick and dirty Christmas Island. I know we got to kind of get rolling. If anyone's got any questions, don't hesitate over there in the chat. Greg says shark. Yeah, there are sharks. There's bull sharks, quite a few of those. You can certainly put on lead wire and try to catch those guys. Little poppers with some wire, bait fish with wire. I've not had a lot of luck. They like follow you a lot. They follow the fly a lot. But I've never had a ton of success getting to eat the fly very good. But there certainly are also sharks out there as well. And you see a lot of manta rays cruising on the flats. So that's kind of fun. Big ones. And they'll go right by you. They're not stingrays, they're manta rays. So they don't have a stinger. But yeah. All right. Any other questions, guys? Okay. Well, great. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Bob is my name, and happy to help if you call the shop. We can take care of any questions you might have, or shoot me an email, bobmiller@redsflyshop.com. We'd love to get you on a Christmas Island trip. I think I'm going next spring. So I can't wait to go back. All right. What's next, Rotor?
I believe we're going to go to
Patagonia. All right. Hang tight.
Perfect. So the PowerPoint worked fine. It was just Google Earth, I think, lagged it. I think it was taking too much energy. I didn't try to. Okay, and you get to all these questions here. All right, folks. We're back. I'm back, and believe our schedule has us going to Chilean Patagonia next. Let me just make sure I'm doing this in the right order. Yeah, we're gonna do. I'm gonna knock 3 of them out here, so I'll be here with you guys for the next 90 minutes or so. And if there's any other questions that pop up, like for Christmas Island or Ascension Bay, if you've been watching since we started, just type them in, and any of us can hit those questions for you. So if something comes to mind, just type it in. But yeah, we're gonna start. We're gonna go to Chilean Patagonia, and I'm gonna get a couple of images and some things ready here real quick. So I'm guessing, so the order you placed first needs to be canceled. That's what you're saying. All right, so let me get back with you guys. We'll get started. So, yeah, we're going to go to Patagonia. So, I have been 7 times to the Cinco, Rios, and Estancia del Zorro combo trip. And what's really unique about this is you're going to see 2 lodges in a single week, and the transition from moving from one lodge to the other lodge is 100% seamless. So, same ownership at both ends. It's the most bulletproof trip I've ever done, and it's going to sound like I'm hyping it up, and I'm going to try really hard not to do that. We're going to try to stick to like, hey, what are the critical things that you need to know to make this trip happen and alleviate any stress or hesitation that you might have over planning trip. But it's been one of the greatest. It's been the greatest trip I've ever been on, as far as like fantastic guides, great logistics, varying fisheries. Every time I've been for 7 trips, I've rarely fished the same place twice. And we'll go through kind of some of the different um, the the different fisheries that we're going to go to there. But let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll knock out. We'll go ahead and knock out. My friend Pablo, one of the guides down there, is on the live stream, which is awesome. What's up, Pablo? That's wonderful. And yes, Chilean guides are the best. Anyway, this trip has been absolutely amazing. I've been 7 times, and I finally wanted to start seeing some of the other staff members here at Reds take groups and get to experience all just the same highs that I've had in going on this trip. I wish now that I had a photo of Pablo in the presentation here. So uh, let's go ahead and just jump over, and we'll just do a screen share. And for some reason, when we actually run it through the proper slideshow, it doesn't like to stream. So we're just going to look at this view right here. So the Cinco Rios Lodge operation is located in Coyhaique, Chile. And Coyhaique, um, the Coyhaique is kind of the almost the epicenter of Chilean Patagonia fishing. From Coyhaique, we're going to be able to access beautiful lake-fed rivers that run through these giant fjords. We're going to be able to fish these enormous, beautiful lakes, but we're also going to have freestone rivers and spring creeks. And you're going to see a habitat that ranges from, snow-capped, glacier-fed rivers all the way to the Argentina boundary, where we're kind of up in these high arid pampas fishing spring-fed creeks, spring-fed river called the Wow, and spring-fed lakes there as well when we move lodges partway through the week. So it's a huge variety of both habitat and varying fisheries. And I've never been any place. I've been to Russia, I've been to Alaska, I've been to Chile, and I've never been any place where I get to experience such a broad variety of fisheries in the course of a week. And for us northerners in North America, one of the other things that's really neat about this trip is you're going to go in, say, January, February, March. I've been in all three of those months. I've had great fishing in all three of those months. But like in January, for instance, it's going to be light until 10 p.m. When you get there. So you get there and you just get this amazing sense of energy. You get nice, hot, warm days that are going to be in the anywhere from 75 to 85 degrees. Nice, cool nights. You're not getting baked like you are in the tropics, and you get to do a different adventure every day. And you eat great, you sleep great, and you fish your brains out all day. So, and you're going to fish out of boats. You're going to fish on foot. It's a new adventure every single day. But let's just kind of pop through just the critical information here about when our 2026 trip is full. Our other week in 2025 is full, but we do have a few spots in the week hosted by Jason Harwood. And Jason went last year, and I primed him for this. I said, Jason, this is going to be the best trip you've ever done. He was like, yeah, we'll see. He went, and he's like, oh my God, it was incredible. He came back, and most every guest in his group rebooked for 2026, and some of them for the other week in 2025. And a few of them for the Feb first week with him. So we got a few spots left in February, and that's going to be grasshoppers, beetles, and primarily dry fly fishing at that time of year. So that's when we have dates. So where are we going? I'm not going to click the Google Earth link this time. That just overstimulated our bandwidth here and broke it. But you can Google Balmaceda, Chile. That's kind of our final flight destination. And just talking about flights, everybody's super nervous. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a 9.5 hour flight. It's not that bad. You're going to watch a couple movies. You're going to sleep for a while, and you're going to depart. Likely Dallas, Fort Worth on your way down. Dallas has got a lot of flights going to Santiago. You fly overnight into Santiago, and then we fly into Balmaceda, which is a tiny airport. It makes uniting with your group and hooking up with the crew from Cinco, Rios, or Estancia del Zorro, depending on which lodge you do first in the week. Super easy. It's very stress-free, and the flight planning is really easy. We've got a travel agent that books everything for us, and you'll immediately get access to a mobile app on your phone that we just went to, and everything will get downloaded once you type in your little entry code, and you'll see exactly what the flights lay out. So if you want to add time to your trip in South America, it's very easy to do. If you want to go in a day early, the planning is simple. We're going to so we've got all of that tuned in and dialed in. So you'll fly into Santiago, and then you'll take a short flight, about a 2.5 hour flight into Balmaceda, and you'll hook up with the crew. I just threw together a couple of photos of the Cinco Rios Lodge. So there's two lodges that we'll fish out of, and they're they're both wonderful. Both want wonderful lodges. The Cinco Rios Lodge is pretty much right on the outskirts of the town of Coyhaique. So it makes it really easy to go in and see Coyhaique, which is a popular destination town for people traveling both from outside the area, but also a lot of people that live in Chile love to go vacation in Coyhaique because it's beautiful and it's a nice town. It's very safe, and you'll get to have a small town Chile experience in Coyhaique. So there's a few shots of the lodge from the lodge. Very luxurious, great lodge, fairly new construction. I can't remember what year it was built, and it's located on the Simpson River, which is one of their main fisheries. Naturally, there's five rivers that the lodge is named after there, but the Simpson, which you can see in the lower left-hand photo, is just one of those. So the other lodge is going to be, it's more historic. It's one of the oldest buildings in that area. It's located just a couple of miles from the Argentina border, up in the mountains there, kind of the peak, the southern foot of the Andes, and it's very dry there. And the famous Estancia del Zorro Spring Creek runs right through the property there. So very cool building, very rich history there. Just a really neat experience and a really great accent to the other experience that you're going to have at Cinco Rios. So you'll split two lodges. I want to save some surprise. Just I'm not going to show you too many photos of the lodges and things. It's okay to not see everything before you go. Now, what waters are we going to fish? So, as far as the fisheries go, there's so much information, and I implore you to. You're obviously on our YouTube channel now. If you're interested in this trip, you've got to go watch the playlists that I filmed. It's such a delight to film and fish on this trip in Chile because it's very photogenic and the fishing is extremely good. So when it comes to actually showing people like what it really looks like when you're fishing there, I don't know, I've put up maybe 20 videos, at least a dozen, maybe 2 dozen. I don't know how many videos, but you'll see real time kind of point of view footage of what it looks like there. But you're going to catch brown trout and rainbow trout. Occasionally, people will catch Chinook, especially later in the year. Which would be like February-ish. There will be a few Chinook in a couple of the rivers there, but we're not really there to target Chinook. But it's pretty cool when somebody ties into Chinook on a big trout streamer and a 6-way rod. You're going to fish natural fed rivers, so there's no big tailwaters, no dams or anything like that. Like these are real fisheries, wild fisheries, and you're going to fish lakes. And the lakes are one thing that people don't realize how much they're going to enjoy the lake fishing when they get there. It's always kind of a treat for folks. Then we've got wild freestone rivers that are in these big fjords. We've got spring creeks, and when you fish out of Estancia del Zorro, you'll fish some spring-fed lakes, which are much more fertile. My biggest fish have come from the lakes around Estancia del Zorro, and so you're not going to be able to do this trip just once and experience everything because there's still a lot of places that I've personally not fished there, and I've been 7 times. So lots of different stuff. There's a shot of one of the lakes. There's one of the walk and wade rivers right there. That might even be Pablo there netting that fish. And then spring creeks. The spring creeks are probably my personal favorite because there's big brown trout and they're a little bit more challenging, and we fish them with little beetle patterns and things. So I'm going to show you my top 3 flies, and let's just hopefully the screen share works fine here, and it's not going to let me do it. There's so many parameters on what I can show and not show, just technologically. But a Rios ground beetle is going to be. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it without a little messing around. But you know what? Let me stop sharing for a second. Let me share a different window, and let me see if this works. And I can show you. Yeah, I could just do it this way. So let's do it this way. So here's my favorite fly. And if my screen's blacked out, somebody chat in, and we'll be able to resolve that. But if I had to choose one fly to take with me, I just love that Rios ground beetle. Great, thanks, Alex. The Rios ground beetle is probably the one fly I would take with me, and I would take it in a bunch of different sizes, all the way from 6 to 10. It's a little small to imitate um, some of the biggest beetles, the Cantaria beetles, the kind of the famous giant beetle that they have there. But you'll fish a lot of small beetles, and I love the Rios ground beetle. Um, the other one that I would take, and let's just look at all our beetles here. That's probably the fastest way for me to jump over. Is this Taylor's Fuzzy Fat Albert? And I would take a couple of the super jumbo models of this to imitate the Cantaria beetle. And the Cantaria beetles will be prolific in the even number years and less in the odd number years, but they're still going to be effective and still going to work in the odd number years. There's just not going to be quite as many. And these are giant. I mean, these beetles are absolutely giant. So you can see in some of the videos I posted or our web offering, you can see what a lot of the actual natural beetles are like. So you're going to want a big variety of beetles when you go, with a strong emphasis on dry flies. You can fish a streamer a little bit if you want; they're good to have, but you're going to want a strong emphasis on beetles and dry flies, and then absolutely the juicy hopper from Rio. That's going to be the hopper that is kind of my go-to. There's Moorish hoppers and other foam hoppers and things, but just foam hoppers really seem to be highly effective, more so than like a Dave's hopper, a parachute hopper, and some of those. But the juicy hopper has been my absolute best hopper. So yeah, those are some of my favorite flies that I have there. And let me go back and I'll show you a few more pictures of where we're going. So um, as far as the gear goes, the gear is going to be really like, where we fish in Eastern Washington, all the way to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, most of the U.S., Western style fishing. We're just going to use 5 and 6 weight rods. If I had to choose one, it would just be a 9 foot 6 weight with some type of fairly aggressive taper on it. Last year, I went with a line that was a little light, and I think like a Rio bank robber line would be really good. A Scientific Anglers Infinity, just some weight forward floating line. It's nice to have a sink tip. I wouldn't call that essential. Like if you can have, 3 rods in case you were to break a tip or something, that's kind of handy. You're usually only going to have one rod rigged up at a time, and then you'll have a couple of rods or a rod either that's in the boat or in the pickup, depending on what you're doing. And then it's, your clothing and stuff, you're going to range from temperatures that might, you could potentially get down as low as, 45 or 50 with a little bit of wind. So you're going to want good wind stopper gear, good shells, really good comfortable waders for hiking, and good boots. Felt is good. You can still wear felt in Chile. Brand new felt is great. You're going to put 6 long days on them. I like to bring a set of Corkers boots so that when I'm fishing the spring creeks, I can plug in a rubber sole for the mud along the spring creeks. I think it's pretty handy. But more so than anything on gear, like we can help you choose the right flies and things like that. That's not a problem at all. What we can't do is we can't make sure every bit of clothing that you have fits. But I think just making sure that you've got a really good layering system, you're very comfortable throughout the day, and you manage your gear really wisely is just going to make you very efficient and comfortable as well. And then the last thing is like if you've been on the whole live stream, you're just throwing it on as background noise. You've probably heard this before, but booking with Reds is super easy. If you want to grab one of those spots in February, we've got a few remaining. Just contact us. Just say hey, I'm in, and we'll get a deposit from you. We take 50% up front, and then the balance 90 days out. You can read our deposit and cancellation policy on all the pages, but we're we're very aggressive if you had to make a cancellation in trying to rebook your spot, get the trip full, so that you get like, I mean, 95% of your deposit back, or something that we charge $100 if we have to move money and do transfers back and forth. But we'll get we do very well on getting it rebooked and getting these trips full. We try not to bite off more than we could chew. So it's very easy, but you'll immediately get emailed instructions on how to get that app for your phone. The app for your phone tells you, hey, here are the flights. Here's the exact flight plan for the host, so you can mirror it going in, so that you're there with the group. And then if you want to add time, you could stay on later. And then what to bring, what to expect, the full itinerary. Does the lodge have Wi-Fi? Do they do laundry? How are we going to do tips? All of that's on your phone. And anytime we make an update, you could just refresh it, and you've got everything right there on your phone. And that all that information actually works offline too. You don't have to have Wi-Fi once you download the trip, kind of the trip information for that particular week. So it's a very smooth process, and the fact that we're going with you, we're going to be there to mentor, counsel. You don't pay any more to go with Reds. We have an arrangement with the outfitter, and that's how they get really big, successful, full groups, which keeps people coming back, and we help them do a great job. So they're a great partner of ours, and we love the crew at Estancia del Zorro and Cinco Rios. Yeah, fantastic fishery. Um, so let's go ahead and I'll just knock out a few questions. So sizes on hoppers, that's a really good question. On hoppers, generally speaking, the smaller hoppers tend to be more effective there, from my experience. 10s and 12s, I'd probably bring a few 8s. But on a lot of the spring creeks and things, I mean, it's slow water. These fish are going to see that fly. They're going to see it. Absolutely. It's not like you're blazing down, the Yakima River in July, right outside our shop door here, where the water is high and swift, and we're trying to peel trout out of fast water from under a cut bank. Most of the hopper fishing is going to be done where it's sight casting, and you can target them with a little smaller hopper, and that tends to work a little bit better. And a lot of your beetle flies, we'll fish giant beetles on some of the bigger rivers around Cinco Rios and in some of the lakes around Estancia del Zorro. But like on the Del Zorro Spring Creek and the various branches, the Needy Wow and some of the other spring creeks there, you're going to fish really little beetles, like little dung beetles, even down to a 16. So the beetles are going to be quite small, much smaller than what people think. And even the streamers are going to be much smaller. Those fish eat a lot of small leeches. And so we fish a lot of small balanced leeches when we do fish streamers. You still want a few big ones. In fact, I'll just bring this up. I'll bring this link up right now, and I'll show you. And this is true. In fact, I'll just share and I'll show this for all of the trips that we do. Um, for all of the trips that we do, if you go to our flies category and you go down to assortments and you click destination packages, you can see the fly recommendations. And we do it like this so that we can constantly be updating and keeping things as fresh as we can. And for you to actually see pictures of the flies that we're recommending rather than just some tired old Word document or a PDF is important. So if we click on fly list for Patagonia trips, you could see a whole fly list here of the flies that we recommend. And yes, we recommend you take a couple of worms. Don't judge. You'll be glad you have them if you need them from one of the spring creeks. But yeah, you could see all of the flies that we recommend. You're going to want some caddis and things, and some purple haze, some balanced leeches, a couple of big streamers, a couple of dropper nymphs, some Moorish hoppers, a couple of stone nymphs, juicy hoppers, of course, some dragonflies, and last but definitely not least, some Rio ground beetles. And you can add this whole assortment to your cart, and then you could adjust what quantities you need or don't need while you're shopping with us. And maybe you're a tire, and if you're a fly tire, now you can replicate some of these patterns as well. So that's true of all of our destinations. You can pop over there and see those. So and then another question came in: how about studs on felter rubber? I don't recommend the studs because you're going to rafts a lot, and the rafts will either, you'll be either stepping on the pontoon to get in, and who knows? You might have a really sharp edge. One of those studs could be ground really, really sharp. You don't want to step on a pontoon. And then in the rafts themselves, you're usually standing on some type of diamond plate or metal flooring, and those studs are obnoxious as hell. So I recommend no studs. The wading there is not, hyper slick. It's not like wading the Grand Ronde or the Deschutes or late season Yakima Canyon. So I don't recommend studs there. And then another question is, why aren't the flies provided? And that's a viable question. One of the reasons is these guides are working long, long ass days for 6 days a week, all season long. For the guides to provide flies for guests just isn't gonna. It's not gonna be feasible for them to do. These guides are highly capable tires, some of the most pragmatic and skilled tires that I've personally been around. I love tying flies, and I've sat down and tied with a lot of the guides there, and they can provide flies if you're in a pinch, but they just can't wear that burden of having to provide flies for everyone all season long. So, and we can certainly provide flies, but they're not included in the trip package price. But what is included in the trip package price? Mention this, but you can go to our website and see all this. I want to make this informative, not salesy, but yeah, all the wine, beer, and alcohol is all included. You're going to drink amazing wine. The food's going to be just like James Beard Award winning style food, like every night. It's just spectacular. But there's no fishing license fee that's included. You don't have to have a vax card or do any COVID testing. That's all gone and done. So your trip fee is really your trip fee plus gratuities, and then you can learn all about that when you book the trip. We have that all kind of laid out for you, so you kind of know what to expect there. Um, and it looks like that's kind of all the questions. If you want, we got a few minutes before we're going to start the next seminar, and I'll probably take a 2-minute break. Just grab a glass of water before we start the next destination. I think we're going to do Cuba next, but what I'll do is I'm going to bring up some of these YouTube videos and just kind of show you what's there. If you want to get like a really accurate idea, and I'll share here in just a second when I'm ready, when I got it brought up. So let's go ahead and share here. And if you just go, back when we're done here, right to our YouTube channel, just click on playlists. And if you need to search Patagonia, you can, but um, playlist here of all of these different, this is the 2024 day by day series. And that's just the 2024. You could see last year, granted, this is me fishing and trying to document things, but everybody is going to have, really great fishing. That's never been a complaint, but you're going to want to not one person has done this trip and come back and said, "Oh my gosh, Joe, that was way over my head. I was kind of a beginner when I started, and it really was too much for me." Nobody's ever said that. It doesn't matter where you're at in your fly fishing journey. This trip every day starts is like a trip through the countryside with just a well-educated English-speaking guide that's wonderful at hospitality and highly skilled at angling. Super guides. And you're going to drive to a different location each day, showing you different scenery, a different watershed. You're going to see, I mean, there's wild guanacas, there's wild Rios. The bird life there is spectacular. You can go see Andean condors for a morning. There's a small upcharge to add that, but there's an Andean condor tour. You can get out of bed super early and see the condors come off the roost one morning. There's so much to this trip outside of just going fishing, and I've really fallen in love with this trip. So you can go and you can see all of these videos from lake fishing to hopper fishing to everything that I've done there. I really believe in this operation and this lodge and this guide team, and you can go there and have a super time. You can catch fish on mice. Yeah, there's everything you want to do, dragonflies and etc. And another question just came in, and it's a good question, and so I'm glad we take these. And the question was, is this a good trip for non fishing person spouse? It's an absolutely excellent trip for that. The accommodations are luxurious, like that's number one. The food and the wine service and just the hospitality in general is, it's essentially unrivaled based on my experience. And I don't want to hype it up and build it up too much. That's the last thing I want to do, but that's the truth on this one. My wife came with me last March on this trip. We missed our 20th anniversary trip due to COVID cancellation, so we made up for it after 21 or 22 years. I'm a little fuzzy on what year we went now, but I think it was 2 Marches ago. And she went with the intention of just kind of like going and fishing a little bit and seeing the countryside, maybe going to Coyhaique one day, doing a little horseback riding, doing the Condor tour. And she wound up fishing 5 out of 6 days. Uh, and I've seen lots of couples go do this trip where a guy will bring his wife that's just, she's fished a little bit, but doesn't necessarily want to commit to all week. And she'll go and she can hike, she can hike the spring creeks, she can bird watch. Uh, the non-angler rate's going to be the same as the angler rate, but the lodges will do their best to provide alternative adventures, sometimes with a small cost if the angler portion of that double occupancy is still taking a guide boat and somebody wants to get a hiking guide or something for the day or needs some transportation. But it's always very reasonable. It can be worked out by the host and the lodge owner or manager upon arrival. But yes, it's an absolutely excellent trip for non-anglers. Very, very good trip. So we're going to take like a 1 minute break real quick. I'm going to mute and then we're going to start. Let me take a look at the schedule here. But I think we're going to talk about, and like I said, getting booked is super easy. Just email Eric at redsflyshop.com. He's sitting right there. He can get you booked in, or just call the shop, get you booked in, get your deposit. Then you can start flight planning very, very easily. But let me look at the schedule real quick and just confirm we're going to do Cuba next. Yep, we're going to talk about the Cuba Zapata liveaboard next. I'm just going to grab a glass of water so I don't lose my voice. And I'll be right back with you here in just a moment. All right, we're just going to jump right in. Um, so we're going to talk about the Cuba Zapata liveaboard trip next, and this is a trip I've done. I went for the first time in 2018. I did not. I personally didn't feel real comfortable going when I had to fly through Mexico or Canada or anything like that. I'd always wanted to fish Cuba, and I wound up at a fly fishing trade show right across from a group called Fly Fishing the Run, and they offer a variety of different trips and experiences. But they were there to market this Cuba Zapata operation that they had kind of a soft start in 2016, and then I went in 2018, and just I'd always want to go to Cuba like everybody. It was always the forbidden fruit, but like I said, I didn't want to go the roundabout way through Mexico or Canada. But when they opened up direct flights, it just became very, very easy to book flights and get into Cuba. And so I jumped in. I went, had a great experience. I really, really enjoyed the liveaboard operation, and so I really enjoyed that. It made for very efficient use of your time. The fishing was great. Fishing's fishing. You can have some really great weeks, some tougher weeks, but the fishing was great, and the time was used very efficiently. Being on that liveaboard, we had very short runs being on that mobile yacht, and we could take the skiffs right from the yacht, and you could be fishing just very, very quickly. I mean, a lot of times the yacht would even be in sight, and so I really like the efficiency of the day. The guides fished long days, fished very hard, and really, really enjoyed kind of the uh, kind of the serene experience of being in the Zapata Marine Preserve. the way the fishing operations are set up there, there's only 8 anglers a week allowed in this very specific marine preserve, and so it's very, very quiet. You don't see other fishing boats. There's like no garbage. It's very pure, and they have really, really, really great wildlife there. So I've had great experiences in the Zapata, and I'm just going to run you through, say say 15 minutes of just a very quick slideshow. Again, this is really trying to hit to people that have heard about the trip, they've seen the trip, they see that we have some openings, and they need a little nudge just to give them that confidence that, hey, I can do this, and it's well organized, etc. So let me jump into my screen share here. So Cuba Zapata, and this is what it looks like. We stay on the Georgiana mothership, and this is kind of what it looks like when we load up each day. I've stayed historically in the first couple of cabins closest to the stern of the boat, and in 7 giant steps, I could be on my skiff. And I counted one day. I'm like, oh my gosh, from my room to my skiff is 7 giant steps. But the guides pull up. The guides bring the boats up. The boats are stored and tied up in a lagoon to keep them out of the wind. So in the morning, the guides will run out, clean up the boats, fuel them up, get them ready, and then when the guides pull up, they pick up their ice, their lunch, and their anglers. And so when your guide comes in between the head guide and myself or whoever the host happens to be, we say, hey, you're heading out with with Rydell or Marcos or um, Esteban or whoever it happens to be, and we get you on the boat and you get moving, and it's a very efficient way to get your day started. So that's what it looks like just loading up in the morning. When are we going? So we've gone everywhere from the last week of January to right into early June, and we've never really seen like that there's one primo week or an advantageous time to go. We've always just felt like it's a little bit weather dependent. It's just really dependent upon the bite that week. We've had good successful trips all the way through. The peak time tends to be right there in April. As far as the weather stability, a little bit less wind. January can be a little bit windy. As you get much later than April and you get into that last week of May and early June, it can get really hot. And that's also when they start to get a little bit more rainfall. And there is the potential for a larger storm cell that's not just daily thermals and wind and breeze that you get coming in. So we have openings for the April 5th through 12th week. Uh, now, uh, my Google Earth fried my screen share earlier. If you were on earlier, we blacked out the system because Google Earth apparently takes a lot of memory, and I didn't preload a map before we started today because usually I scroll around on Google Earth. So we're not going to do that today. But the Cuba Zapata. In fact, I'm just going to stop my share for a second, and I'm going to bring up the map real quick because I do think it's important to know exactly where we're going. So let me just bring up a map, and I'll just do a stable screen share uh, in Google Earth. We'll do a two-dimensional thing. So let me share again. I'll show you right where it is. All right. So if this is Cuba here, and if I black the screen out, just let me know in the comments real quick. But we've got Key West here, we've got Havana, and then we've got the Zapata National Park right here, and it's shaped like a Zapata shoe. Um, and we actually launch in the Bay of Pigs, right about in here. And logistically, we only have so much time for each segment, so I'm going to go brief on the logistics, but we're going to change up how we're doing it a little bit for this year. But we're going to fly into Havana mid-morning. We're going to go see downtown Havana for a few hours, and then we're going to hop on group transportation, nice bus, and we're going to wind up down here in Playa Larga area. We're going to get on the yacht, and we're going to sleep on the yacht that first night, so we're right there in port and ready to go. Um, And then we're going to motor all the way around the outside right out here, if you can see my cursor, which I think you can. And we're going to wind up mooring in this area right over in here. So, and we're going to fish pretty much this entire area right in here uh, on the Zapata trips. So that's approximately where we're going. So that is going to be kind of the southwestern portion of Cuba is going to be where the Zapata is located. And there are operations all over Cuba. We've hosted trips in 2 different locations in Cuba, and the Zapata just seems to win out based on variety. The other thing about the Zapata trip that's very unique is you're going to get 3 days as a single angler in your own skiff. So that means 100% of the opportunities are going to go just to you. So you're not sharing bow time. It's a great option for a single angler that's traveling solo. That you're going to get half the time by yourself, half the time you get to yuck it up with a new friend that meet on the trip. And the host of these trips, Shan Sedgwick, happens to be hosting the April trip. He's very experienced, been to Cuba many times. He'll just write up a schedule where we rotate anglers and guides throughout the week to make sure everybody's getting access to maybe the more experienced, the more energetic, or guides. You're going to get to see, have an experience with all the different guides throughout the week, so you don't have to worry about some long time repeat guest, bogarting the guide the entire week. So we rotate that through, and that's important to know about all of our hosted trips and how we tend to operate. Let me jump back to my other share here real quick, and let me bring that up. And that just kind of keeps me on track so we can be efficient here. The liveaboard life is great. The cabins are small, but they're well appointed. There are a couple of double bunk cabins and some single bunk cabins. And what we do, if people book in groups of 2, we default you to the double bunk cabins. It just makes it easier for us to put single anglers that have booked totally alone, don't know anybody on the trip. We generally reserve the single cabins for them, and then the double cabins for fishing buddies. And then there's a private bathroom in each one of the cabins. They're small. The boat itself is pretty rustic. I mean, this is an adventure. The food is good. You're going to have good service. You're going to have good mojitos in the evening. Great rum. But it is a pretty rustic boat. It's not a Carnival cruise line. But you're going to be comfortable. You're going to fish hard, and you're going to have a hot shower and a mojito every day when you get back. But the liveaboard life is great. You're going to see every sunrise, every sunset, and there's not going to be bugs. When you're out there fishing, because that sea breeze just knocks everything down. At night, the lights run on the back of the boat, and it will attract bait fish. And you'll actually see tarpon right off the stern of the boat at night, and you can fish for those. There will be some jacks that show up occasionally, and on a couple of occasions, we've had guests hook and catch tarpon off the back of the boat at night, which is pretty fun to go down there with a drink in hand and try to catch these tarpon that show up under the lights at night. It's pretty neat. So, liveaboard life is pretty fun. I've really, really enjoyed it. Where we're anchored, there's not going to be any boat swell or significant boat rock. So if you're nervous about getting seasick, that's not going to happen while you're moored up. Now the run when we go out is going to be about 3.5, maybe 4 hours if you have a headwind. Even that big boat, being 90 feet, can rock some when you're going out, depending on the wind angle. We had a pretty rough ride out on my trip last year, and that was an anomaly. I mean, it was just the way the wind was coming in was just exactly perpendicular to our path of travel, and so those waves were just rocking the boat as we're going out. So if they have a propensity for seasickness, you might load up on a motion sickness, a Dramamine or some sort the morning or the night before you go out. But it would be the run in or the run out that you could potentially get a little motion sickness. But once you're out, you're in that protected, marine preserve, and there's going to be very little rocking of the boat. Just so you know. As far as the species we're fishing for in Zapata, And we're going to fish for a whole bunch of different stuff. And I've got this a little bit out of order here, but I'm going to hit the different species, just show you pictures of each species so that if you're an inexperienced saltwater angler, I want to make sure we get you completely filled in here. But the boats look like this right here. They're just traditional dolphin style flat skiffs. Uh, they've got pretty good boats. Occasionally there will be, a boat will have, like anything, they'll have a little engine trouble from time to time. But the guides are great at getting those fixed up and repaired. They have extra boats to run out and repair, a guide radios and says they broke a prop or something like that. They have a mechanic and a whole team on board. And if there's a short straw and a broken boat or anything like that, that's when your host steps up and takes the short straw. So it's great to have an angler on the trip in the form of the host that can take that boat that's maybe not running great or not working or something like that on the trip. But that's a picture of the boats there. As far as the species go, we're fishing primarily resident tarpon. That's an example of probably a slightly above average tarpon, but that's Steve, and he knows how to hold them and make them look about 30% bigger than they are. But a 10-pound tarpon is pretty typical. We have caught some very, very large tarpon on these trips. I was able to catch one about 70 pounds last year, which was one of my personal best tarpon. And it was just kind of a fluke. We just happened to, just chance into a migratory tarpon, made a good shot, hooked it, got a good hook in it, got it landed. I don't know that I put a picture of that one in here. No, I did not, because I was just going to show you a representation of each species. But most of the resident tarpon fishing, you're going to be well within sight of the mangroves. You're going to fish in the mangroves. You're going to fish small lagoons. And then there's a few places where you can hook some larger tarpon, not fishing way offshore, but you can fish in the open flats where you're actually targeting schools of moving and rolling tarpon as well. But that's a typical tarpon scenario that you're seeing right there. And all the boats are affixed with these really good steel lean bars as well. The bonefish in Zapata are great. And there's some exceptional bonefish. 5-pound fish are not uncommon at all. They're going to be about another 20% bigger than, say, an Ascension Bay bonefish. In the bonefish fishing, you can do it on foot. You can do it out of the boat. So you can do some spot and stock walking wades as well. Lots of options for bonefish in and out of the boat. The bonefish fishing is absolutely over the top good. Most people, and it's almost unfortunate because a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate the bonefish as much in Zapata because there's a lot of other species that are larger that you can target. But I think if people went to Zapata and said, "Hey, I'm going to experience Cuba. I'm going to get a little time in Havana. I'm going to have a chance at maybe a permit or a big tarpon or something like that," but they've spent 75% of their time on bonefish, I think that would be like really great advice, because just because you're targeting bonefish doesn't mean you're not going to see tarpon or snook or permit or barracuda or jacks or whatever the other species are. It just means you're going to catch a lot more bonefish. uh, Permit, it's a good destination for permit. It can be hit or miss like anything else. There's been weeks where one of my guests got 3 permit in a single day. There in Zapata, and these are all shallow water tailing permit. There's no blue holes in deep water where the permit are just kind of schooling up. These are all going to be shallow water experiences, often with permit that are tailing, which is just so incredibly exciting. Um, yeah, so incredibly exciting. And barracuda fishing is fabulous in Zapata because of the limited fishing pressure. The barracuda here tend to bite really well, much bitier and more playful than, say, the barracuda in Ascension Bay that just flat out see a lot more pressure. uh, but it brings the point up, like, because this is a limited trip, limited opportunity, it is remote, it requires a liveaboard, it's a more expensive trip. But that's part of what you're paying for, is when you do get a shot at a barracuda, you're likely to get that fish to bite. And man, they are strong, they're fast, they jump, they're absolutely incredible. So the barracuda fishing is wonderful. You're going to bump into some jacks from time to time. Jacks fight like trucks. They're super strong. They're super aggressive. We had some folks, and that's Curtis Frisbee. He's one of our, Cuba hosts. as well. He's been there a couple of times now. Uh, but the jacks are great. We had guests land very nice jacks on my last trip, and they just saw birds working a bait ball slightly offshore, and they just jetted out there and got into a school of jacks and had a heyday with them. But you'll also see jacks just up in the shallows. Jacks are very resourceful and very versatile predators, so you will see those in the shallow water as well. And then there's a whole bunch of other species. That's a mutton snapper, which are just absolutely beautiful. They just have this electric blue. But there's species there that you're going to catch and see that aren't necessarily going to be listed in the quote unquote brochure. And there's sharks that you can catch. And there's lots of different experiences that you can have. You're just going to have to make the trip your own. So lots of different species, primarily you're targeting the Grand Slam species, that tarpon bonefish kind of permit is what you're up to. Let me share. Let me share my top three flies, just so you kind of have an idea of what we're fishing and what we're going to take with us here. And for those that have been hanging on for a while, they've probably seen this slide, but we're going to visit it again. And for all the trips that we go on and host, and I want to emphasize this. Maybe you're not going to book this year with Reds. Maybe it'll be next year down the road, or you'll be thinking about it, or you'll tell your buddy. Like, we're going on these trips, like, because we're going, we are choosing the best flies that we possibly can. And our fly lists change as we learn more or we get access to new flies. So our fly lists aren't some tired old Word document from, 1994. We change this stuff all the time as we learn more and fish. And all of our destinations, there is a complete fly assortment right here. And ignore some of the prices. There's just that there's a little glitch in the software. It says this is $1,500 to get the fly list for Ascension Bay. That's not true. Uh, let's click the Cuba pricing there. And there's a nice permit from Cuba that you can see there. And that was caught on that top fly right there. That's my favorite fly for permit, is going to be that Casablanca raghead crab. That's the one I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw it until it doesn't work. I might get a green one and switch to the olive if I'm over turtle grass. Maybe you remember that tip. If you're fishing over green grass, the crabs are often going to be green. And that's what this permit, they have incredible vision. That's what they're looking for. But you can view the shopping list here, and you can check out what we like for our different trips or that we do. This one is, again, focused on Cuba. And the fly that I like best for tarpon is going to be the smelling salt. And I'm going to have that in a variety of colors. And black and purple would be my number one for tarpon. But I really like the fact that there's a weed guard on those, so that when I'm throwing up under the mangroves, if as long as you don't yank it back and you just shake it out of the mangroves very delicately, you could pull that fly out. So the smelling is my favorite for that. But you could check all these out. We've got Cuda flies on here. You're going to want to bring a popper, and there's a variety of different flies. And again, you just go to flies, destination packages, and flies. Now in Cuba, I want a very, very, very lightly weighted fly. And I'm gonna focus my bonefish flies on ones that have these very lightweight bead chain eyes. The bonefish there are going to be in very shallow water. You don't have a lot of tidal drift, and that's a fabulous fly for bonefish. That bead chain eyes bonefish bug, and there's a variety of others. Just bead chain eyes are where I would put most of my emphasis. And maybe you're a fly tire. If you're a fly tire, this is great, being able to look at real photos of the flies that we're recommending and be able to either one, maybe you already have some of these patterns that are very similar. And it looks like we're missing, I need to add a couple of snook flies in there. And if I were choosing one fly for snook, for me, that's going to be a tan and cotton candy 2-aught Nyaka, is what that's going to be. So I need to add that in there to that fly list. But the Nyaka would be my number one snook pattern. And you can catch jacks on that. You can catch tarpon on that. It does a little bit of everything. So the Nyaka 2-aught is just a really great pattern to have for anything in those flats. So my screen's probably going to go black here. So let me stop that share and let me switch my screen back. and we'll talk about rods a little bit. Then we'll just do some Q&A. So start typing questions in if you have some questions. Just please start putting those in there, and then I'll just kind of hit them all at once. As far as rods and gear, uh, one, you can trust us to help get you prepared right. And prepared right doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. If this is your first saltwater trip and maybe you're going with a buddy, might be your last saltwater trip, we're not going to overload you and say you have to have this and you have to have that. There are a few things that you absolutely have to have, and one of them is just going to be a fly rod and a reel. And if I could recommend one rod to do it all, it's going to be a really strong 8 weight that's saltwater specific. It doesn't have to cost $1,000, but you should be able to trust it for a week of fishing and be able to cast it. If it's a 9 weight rod, that's fine too. I personally would probably take a 9 if it was just going to be my one and only for the entire week. And you can fish everything there with a 9 weight rod in a floating tropical line. And you can take as few as 24 flies. We can help you choose those very carefully. There's a way you can buy flies from us called our Deadly Dozens, and we'll curate a package for you. That's an assortment that's well balanced and rounded for a destination. 24 flies, then focus just on bonefish and permit leaders. Maybe you take one roll of 40-pound shock tippet for baby tarpon and snook. You can handle most all of those on a 9 weight. That's not going to be a problem. As soon as you start getting into barracuda, you're going to need wire leader. You're going to need flies that are very specific to barracuda. So maybe you punt the ball on barracuda, or you share a 10 weight rod with your boat partner on days when you're together, and that's just the communal barracuda rod that would be a 10 weight. And the well prepared angler, most people are going to fall somewhere in between, but you're going to want an 8, a 9, and a 10 weight rod. Your eight's going to do your bonefish and maybe your snook and your kind of your light work. And your 9 weight's going to wear a permit fly or a tarpon fly on your tarpon days. And your 10 weight's either going to be a tarpon fly uh, or a wire leader for barracuda. And it's okay to have those nice heavy rods. I fished an 11 weight for tarpon quite a bit when I was there last year. And I used that for my cuda and tarpon in the open water. And I was glad I had an 11 because I did land, nice, 70, maybe 80-pound tarpon. So, and I actually casted some 100-pound tarpon as well. So you really never know what you're going to get. So being prepared, but not overly prepared, is smart. About 60 flies, you're going to need some wire. You're going to need some 40 and 60-pound shock tippet. I busted some really nice sized tarpon off on 40-pound. So if you're going to be well prepared, you're going to want 60-pound as well. So we have lists that you can pivot off of, and then we're at your disposal to just say, hey, I'm on a budget this trip. Uh, here's what here's kind of what I feel like I should have. Or, hey, I've been there a few times now and I really want to be like, I want to knock it out of the park. And here's what I've got. Help me fill in the blanks so that I'm that well prepared angler. Uh, and then as far as like getting booked with us, it's super easy. You can email Eric. He's sitting behind me. You can email me. We're just joe@redsflyshop.com or eric@redsflyshop.com. Contact us privately, call us, live chat us on our web, whatever you want to do if you have any, hang ups as far as doing the trip. But when you book with Reds, you can pay your deposit by credit card, take 50% up front. You're in. That's when we start communicating on what you need to travel, what documentation you need. It's all very straightforward. You will have to do a little bit of work on your part, but it's not complicated. It's very, very easy. And probably within the next month or two. Trip's not till April, but in the next month or two, we'll finish off the mobile app for this Zapata trip, and then that puts everything you need right there on your phone. Like literally every question you have about packing, documentation, the visas, what's going to happen when we get into Havana. What happens if I don't get into Havana on time, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all going to be right there on your phone. We're going to do a great job of communicating with you. But the number one thing is like just get your spot with Reds, and then we can help you take care of the rest and just make it stress free for you. So, yeah, let me stop sharing here, and then let's hit a couple of questions. Yeah, a couple of nice comments from Fly Fishing Newbie. Yeah, reinforcing like short runs are great. Like it's very efficient use of your time. You don't have to, there's no trailering a boat, there's no riding a car. You jump off the yacht onto your fishing skiff and you go. It's just straightforward and it works. The hosts are great. Um, yeah, and there was another question. Can you rent fly rods? This is a very, very good question, and we probably will get back to that. So I'm going to answer your question just the short version. Say yes, you can rent rods from Reds. We kind of were doing it for a while, and then we went away from it, and we're probably just going to go back to it now that we've got. One is we need to get the gear shipped out to you the week prior so that you can cast it a little bit. And then you've got to ship it back, and so there is a fair bit of expense just in the shipping the stuff back and forth if you can't pick it up. The hosts a lot of times can't bring all of the rental rods and reels because if you just wind up if you're like, oh, we need 8 rods on this trip, all of a sudden the host can't necessarily do that. So we prefer to ship the stuff out so people can cast them a little bit, and then they've got them in their possession so that if the host check bag or bag doesn't get there for some reason, not all the anglers' rods are lost. So I could explain a big variety of reasons we don't necessarily want to travel with all the rental rods. So we ship them out. You've got them. You get back from the trip. You've already got a prepaid return shipping label, and you send it back. But some people view it as a little bit cost prohibitive because it ends up costing about $150 a week to rent a rod and a reel. And so a lot of folks look at it and just go, "Hey, I'm just going to buy an inexpensive rod and reel." And that way, I've got it. But yes, we can rent rods and reels, and we can make that happen for you. You want to do the trip? Um, yeah, question like what shoes would you recommend? You could do a whole bunch of different directions on shoes, but in the boat, you want some type of boat shoe. In fact, I'm wearing an appropriate boat shoe right now that I really like. But whatever you've got, you want something with a siped sole that is meant for slick plastic or fiberglass surfaces that can get in the water. It can get out of the water. You can wear that and fish out of that on the boat. I do not go barefoot in the boat. I do not go barefoot in the water anymore. We had a guest jump out of the boat barefoot to go chase down a permit and cut his foot pretty severely on one of our trips. In fact, it was in Cuba. And so that kind of scared me off. I used to go barefoot all the time. So something you could wear in the water a little bit in the boat, and then a zip booty or a dive style lightweight booty for Zapata is good. You do not need a heavy sneaker or a boot that laces up in Zapata. But I don't recommend just wearing closed-toed shoes. If somebody wanted to go on the cheap, and I like being very candid when I say this, like you can get by with a kind of a bare minimum. You could wear old basketball sneakers or running shoes. Low top shoes. You're going to get more stuff in there. They don't cinch around your ankle, and then give them to the guides at the end of the week. Our hosted trips, we try to be very generous and make it somewhat of a humanitarian mission as well, where we bring shoes and clothes and fishing gear. If you've got a cheap watch that you're not in love with, all that kind of stuff, we really try to bless those guides and the boat staff with a lot of gear. Wear your wear an old set of sneakers all week. Wear them in the water. Give them to the guides. They'll wash them up. They would love to have those because they don't get access to purchase that stuff at any type of reasonable amount. So Crocs, guides love their Crocs, man. That's a great gift. But we'll have like um, for folks that are on the trip, we will do like Zoom meetings that are exclusive to just people going on that trip or that week. And we'll get right down to the nitty gritty of the travel and stuff. I'm just trying to fill in the big blanks so that we can give you the confidence to get signed up. Flights generally go right through Miami, streamlined. American Airlines lands there about 4 times a day. That part's super easy getting there. But just peel off some time and a little bit of money and let's get you fishing. So I think that wraps up all the questions for Cuba Zapata. But yeah, hopefully we filled in the blanks for folks. And we're going to jump into another trip here in just a second. And let me take like a 1 minute intermission, and I've got to round up the file I need for that. So I'm going to mute here for a second, and I've got to grab that file. All right, I'm back on here. The next topic that we're going to talk about is going to be Baja Roosterfish couples trip. I think that's on the schedule next. If it's not, somebody correct me, but that's what we're going to talk about. And that's been one of my favorite trips for like just crazy adrenaline packed saltwater fly fishing. It's absolutely awesome, and the format we've done it in is couples, and it's like the best trip to take a non-angler or somebody that wants to fish a little bit but just really wants a super vacation. And I just got to grab my slideshow off this other computer here. Eric's going to shoot it over to me, but yeah, if you're thinking about doing this trip, just start shooting in questions, and then I'll kind of get to those in the back end. And I've done a bunch of videos and lots of social media and that kind of stuff on it. So many of you have probably seen. Eric, that didn't come through. A lot of you have probably seen that, and I'm gonna grab a slideshow for you guys as well. Yeah, so yeah, we'll just start going through. Good. We got a couple of questions. So uh, we'll just start with the question. So the Baja Roosterfish trip is one I've been doing. It started in as couples. I'm trying to think of the year, but maybe 2011 or 10, or we've been going a long time. I know my wife and I've personally done 13 hosted trips to the Baja Peninsula. And I don't know, we did the first like three or four or five or whatever it was. We're having a great time. We're like, oh, this will be we'll do it one more time, and then we'll do something else. And we'd go. We just have like the most amazing experience together as husband and wife, and like just fishing and having a great time. And then I've done a bunch of trips to the Laredo, Mexico area where we were primarily targeting Dorado and other pelagic species there, and we stayed in Laredo, and it was wonderful. And then stumbled into another destination called Bahia de los Sueños, that's operated by an outfitter named Flyfish Mex. And my wife and I went there for the first time, I think 5 years ago, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is the Shangri-La of like fly fishing vacations. And we've been every year since. And unfortunately, we're not going this year because I've got a son graduating high school in June, and we always go at the end of June. And that's like the best roosterfish fishing of the year based on all my research and my experience having been there. And it was just a little bit too much to leave in that third week of June, just post high school graduation, because we want to go do something with my son. So another wonderful couple from Reds, Jason and Stephanie Harwood. They get that trip on loan for 1 year, and then my wife Kelly and I will be back hosting that again. But even if you're not like thinking you're doing the couples trip, like stay on this webinar here, because we'll show you a lot about the kind of the technical fishing aspects and where you're going, and we'll talk you through kind of the ins and outs of this trip. And yeah, for some reason I'm not getting my formal presentation, but this is going to be better. We're going to wing it. We're going to wing it, right? So here's what we're fishing for. And I'll show you what a big roosterfish looks like here. And that is a big roosterfish. So the East Cape of the Baja Peninsula is the #1 destination in the world to fly fish for trophy roosterfish. Now, not everybody's going to land roosterfish like that. They're hard to catch. They're giant. A lot of people lose them. A lot of people make mistakes early in the fight when that fish is juiced up and incredibly powerful. But this destination is one of those. The world record holder for roosterfish on the fly is Margaret Shaughnessy, the co-owner of the operation of Bahia de los Sueños, where we go. And so if that's any indication, and numerous world records, there's some stuff that you have to do to certify a world record. But fish, similar to this one there. have been caught. So it's a wonderful destination for gigantic roosterfish. So a typical roosterfish is going to look probably a little bit more like this one when you're down there. That's an average size roosterfish. In certain years, we'll catch lots of roosterfish, and the bite's great. Everybody's getting them. Sometimes multiple roosterfish a day. And then at other times of the year, gosh, we're lucky to catch a couple for the group for the whole week. And we'll have beautiful weather. It'll be hot and sunny and very comfortable. And it's just these are pelagic fish where they move in and out of the big areas of the ocean. They migrate up and down the Baja Peninsula, and so it can be a little bit hit or miss at times there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a map. Um, I'm going to bring up a map, just a big map, and show you where the East Cape is. And I know I'm not showing it to you right now. I'll switch my screen share. Um, they do a really great job of just locking down the screen share here. So let me show the map here, and we'll kind of show you where we're traveling and where we're going and etc. So let me zoom way out, and this is the Baja Peninsula here, and Cabo is down here way on the tip, Cabo San Lucas, or well, San Jose del Cabo is where we're actually going to fly into. And we're going to be way up here on the East Cape, and we're going to be about 45 minutes um, driving from La Paz. And the car time, it's all shared ground transportation. So if you're thinking about doing this trip, you're going to land in Cabo. Our host is going to be there. We have well organized shuttle services. We're going to group ride and share transportation all the way up to the resort, which is going to be, let me turn on the satellite because that's easier for me, to the Gran Sueño Resort. And this is called Bahia de los Sueños, the Bay of Dreams. And this resort is absolutely exceptional. It's a beautiful place. You can look it up online. It's Gran Sueño. And what we do is we broker out a series of these villas that we put all of our groups up in. They're luxurious. I don't want to make this too salesy. I want to make it just more informative. Here are the facts. And it's wonderful. You've got a huge white sand beach in front of the resort. So non-anglers can do stand-up paddleboarding. They can snorkel. They could swim. They could lay on the beach. They could use one of the many swimming pools that are at the resort there. And it's just luxurious accommodations at the resort there. But that's where the resort is, and it's just wild. It's just at the foot of these mountains. It's absolutely gorgeous, and some of the most beautiful homes I've ever seen on planet Earth. There's a reason that the Billionaires Club are buying homes right here on this point because it's absolutely spectacular. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We're going to fish a couple of different areas, and the most popular area for giant roosterfish, it's not a giant secret, but it's going to be this beach at this point, which is geographically located right here. In those big roosterfish in late June, it's pre-spawn time for them, and that's where they tend to migrate to find a spawning mate that's just got the appropriate characteristics, often very large. The large fish are going to congregate there, and we get some really unique shots of these rooster fish in that 50 to 100-pound range. And so for big rooster fish, we're probably going to be focusing on the lighthouse most of the time right here. And there will be other boats. It's not a big secret. You're going to be fishing within sight of other folks. The other area that we fish is going to be south, and that's a little bit more wild. You're not going to see quite as many people, but there are certain areas along this beach down here that you're going to fish, and you're going to find good sized rooster fish there, but not the super duper jumbo models. But all of this is about within 20 to 30 minutes running of the resort. So you're not doing these long, really rough runs in rough water during the course of the day by fishing there. So we fly into Cabo, we hook up as a group, and we do shared ground transportation all the way back up to Bahia de los Sueños. So let me jump over. I'll show you a few more photos. They're going to come in a very, very random order here. But that's okay because I can just kind of show you what the boats look like and what the lodge looks like and etc. And we had a question come in. Thank you for the question. What's the temperature like that time of year? Uh, it's going to be roughly 90 degrees, late June, 90 degrees, 75, 80 at night, very comfortable, dry air, not muggy or anything like that. But numerous times I've come from Eastern Washington where it's 100, 105 here. And yes, we have a desert in Eastern Washington. Those who aren't familiar with where our location is, it'll be 105 here. We'll go down there, it'll be 90, and it's just awesome. Being on the beach, 90-degree days. It's a really great kind of weather. So uh, the pickup for our trips is going to be right on the beach. The guys have well-appointed pangas, super clean boats. The guides are great. They don't speak a ton of English, but they're very hospitable, very friendly. They speak enough English to communicate pretty well and get you lined out. And then we actually provide pretty cool cheat sheets for those that don't speak much Spanish, but we provide like angler specific cheat sheets that are kind of fun to study in advance. And so you can say, close or far, deep or shallow, left or right. There's some fun stuff in there that the guides appreciate our effort to be able to communicate with them. I think one of the most challenging jobs on earth has got to be a bilingual fly fishing guide. I mean, fly fishing is hard enough as it is, let alone doing it in a bilingual fashion. So I'll show you this picture. That's my wife's first rooster fish. And she started out going on these Baja trips as a non-angler, and then the last 2 years, she's just fished her brains out. It took her a little while to gain a lot of confidence. She's not a bad angler, but she never really, she felt like she was detracting from the trip by fishing. Now we pay a little bit more. We get our own boat. We've got our own boat every day, and if she wants to fish hard all day, she can. If she wants to read her book and get a suntan, she can. But she managed to get her first rooster fish this year, which was great. Uh, Let me show you kind of what pickup in the morning looks like. So pickup in the morning is right in front of the resort. So that's all of us. Just we pull the Jeep down. We've got access to a Jeep to haul our lunch and our drinks and beers and that kind of stuff, whatever we want to take on the boat for the day, down to the beach. And then we're just chilling, waiting for the guides to roll in, pick us up in the morning. Um, some of the gals are fishing, some aren't. There's lots to do at the resort. And, that's always kind of a question like, well, what is there to do at the resort? Uh, Most of the folks that stay back, they'll spend the first couple of days just doing the resort, walking the beach, maybe doing a little swimming, snorkeling, stand-up paddleboarding, and then we can arrange for yoga. You can get massages. You can broker transportation as a group of non-anglers to La Paz and just do a little sightseeing in La Paz as well. But most folks they're very comfortable with the resort. It's just nice kind of being there and on vacation. And the other thing is, our fishing days aren't super long. So if you're thinking about going as a non-angler, we're back from fishing. 2 o'clock would be like a late day. Usually we just hit it hard in the morning. We're on the water about 6 hours, then we're back. So it's not a super, super long day. Uh, we're also catching Dorado there. My wife caught a bigger Dorado than me this last year. She was pretty stoked about that. The Dorado fishing can be absolutely incredible. Like Dorado can be very, very easy to catch, especially right off the bat in the morning. Our fishing style is we're throwing live sardines into likely areas where the fish are hanging out. And once live sardines are in the water, the fish get a little confidence. They go, okay. And that's how we try to generate a shot that's an opportunity that's close enough to the boat for an active fish. The ocean out there is huge. And fly fishing is, we're limited on our casting range. And so we can't pull the boats, we can't paddle the boats. We're really at the mercy of the wind and the drift, and so we've got to keep or get those fish close enough to the boat. And so Dorado can be caught pretty close to the boat, and they're a pretty easy species to catch many times. Here's another shot just loading up in the morning. That's one of my favorite times of day, is just drinking coffee, jumping in the boats down there right on the beach in front. Uh, every room's got a spectacular view. You get to see the sunrise every single day. Get to lay in bed, watch sunrise, and then it's time to go. The accommodations are absolutely wonderful. That's what one of the boats would look like when you're hooked up. You got a guide, another angler, you're hooked up. We fish close to the shore. So folks are kind of worried about like, oh my gosh, I want to go, but I don't want to run 15, 20 miles out. You're not going to do that. you're going to be fishing close to the beach the entire time. So yeah, you can kind of see the background in there. There's a shot of what it looks like from up on the hill when you arrive at Bahia de los Sueños. Super classy place. It's got an interesting history. I won't deep dive into the whole history, there. And dinners are great, cocktails, ceviche, avocados. We eat at the restaurant there. There's a restaurant on site. We eat every single night at the restaurant right there. And after night one, they know us by name. Meal service is included in the cost of the trip, and then we just run a bar tab throughout the week for alcohol, cocktails, and then any additionals if you want to have appetizers when you get back from fishing. That just goes on your tab. And I found it to be a very, very reasonable down there. One other thing that we do that's kind of fun, we did a tamale making class one year, and that was like super well run. We did that with Marcella, and that was a blast. You just get a bunch of couples, and we all stuffed and made our own tamales from scratch, which was super cool. That was kind of an enriching part of the experience. And when you get into the Dorado, it is ridiculously fun. The Dorado are great. You're going to get lots of doubles, lots of action, super great time. We'll keep a couple of the Dorado or mahi mahi. If we're eating them, we call them mahi mahi. If we're fishing for them, we seem to call them Dorado, which I've always thought was kind of funny. And it can be, absolutely super, super great. Yeah, the whole place is cool. You can fish with conventional gear a little bit. This is my wife's cousin. They don't fly fish a lot. Um, they fly fish a little bit. They'll probably be coming with us next year on the trip again. But they went out and Karen fly fish not at all. Walt fly fished a little bit, but they mixed it up. They caught marlin, roosterfish, dorado, jacks, and they would fish conventional a little bit. They'd fly fish a little bit. There's conventional rods on all the boats. So if you want to go out and try to catch marlin or billfish or anything like that, um, that's an open option for you, as there are conventional rods in every boat. Um, a shot of one of our groups on the beach from one year. Um, Always having great time with all the couples that go. And one thing I'll say, like, to focus this towards what we're doing, which is the couples trip, is like the dining experience. You don't have to necessarily dine with a big group every night. If you have another couple you're going with, or you and your spouse want to have like a private dinner and have date night, you just go to the restaurant, you just grab a table and sit by yourselves, and that way you can control your conversation and have that time with that other couple or your spouse that you want to do or that you want to have. But one thing I will say, like if you're thinking about doing this trip and you can book, like I can't recommend this enough. I just have seen so much satisfaction and success here. Like if you have another couple that you enjoy being around, you like fishing with, and you want to spend time with, you can book as two couples that are non-anglers, and it's less expensive to book like a non-angler. And then on the trip, and I want to make sure I explain this right. On the trip, let's just say I'll just take kind of the stereotypical situation is the boys want to fish their brains out all week. The gals, they want to fish a little bit if the weather's nice, and that's only really possible if you either one broker your own boat all week, and the husband or the angler in the group is fishing by themselves and somebody stays back. What you can do if you book as like kind of a couples unit, four of you, you could have that gives you a boat, and that is your boat for the week, and you can ask the non-anglers to join you, and all four of you go in that one boat on those days because you've already arranged it for a little group and your fishing partners. I do that all the time with my friends Connor and Trisha that are here. Trisha doesn't like to fish that much. She wants to go if the weather's nice, and she wants to go for a day or two. And so what I do is we just say, Connor and I just say, hey, let's take the girls and let's go four in a boat that day, and we go fool around. We troll a little bit. We hit the Dorado hard in the morning. and then we drink some beer, get out on a beach, go look at the dolphins, do a little whale watching, and we just make it kind of an eco tour and kind of kind of a scaled back day. And I think that's a really great way to book if you have two couples and you have anglers, or excuse me, you have non-anglers in that group, because you get a boat for the week and you can utilize that boat. The only additional upcharge, we just tip the captains more that day. We just basically give them like a double tip for being hospitable and taking four in their boat. And those captains, they love that. They would love to have four people in their boat because their tip money is going up, and it's a low key day. So that's a great way to book, in my opinion. If you're thinking about like, hey, you have a kind of a foursome and you want to go together and spend time together, that's just a great way to do it. Um, Here's a picture of James and Margaret. They're the owners. They're American. They live in Oregon. James and Margaret also own the Beulah Fly Rod Company, which I fish Beulah rods when I'm there almost exclusively. And Margaret's the world record holder for roosterfish on the fly, and you can see the certification at the bar there. And it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do. So I want to get my picture taken with Margaret and her world record certificate, which is pretty cool. Here's the view from the pool. And that's kind of like the group pool. We come back, we have happy hour there every night, or every afternoon we get back. The pool's full. We have some music going. It's a really, really great time. And there's lots of space at the resort to spread out. If you want to be introverted for a couple of afternoons and evenings and not be out and about with the main group, no problem. This trip is set up extremely well for that. Um, that's a view from one of the rooms. My beautiful wife is there. We're ready to go fishing. We're setting up our rods, and she's reading her book and drinking coffee while we watch for the captains to pull up. And then when we see the captains pull up, we just basically grab the rods and head for the beach. It's a great way to start your day. It's a very efficient operation there. And then that's what the view looks like from under the palapa. Right there. So that's the view from under the plop, and that's kind of our general hangout in the mornings and evenings. That's kind of our group meeting place there. Now, as far as flies go, let me bump back up to flies because people are curious what we're throwing. Always curious, kind of what we're throwing at these roosterfish in Dorado, and the jacks. I didn't mention the jack crevalle yet, or show you photos of the jacks, but we catch a lot of jacks. But it's really kind of a match the hatch game. These fish are actively feeding on sardines, and you can see the sardine. It's pretty easy for us to identify what the real one is. And then we've got a variety of match the hatch patterns right around the sardine there. But the two right here are the flies that I have had my most success on, and those are called airheads. And they have that bubble head. And what that makes, it makes for a very three-dimensional appearance of that fly. And so that way, even if the fly is coming toward the fish, it's very three-dimensional. I've had a lot of success on those airhead flies. So, yeah, I think you've pretty much seen most everything that there is to see after a big day catching roosterfish. Tequila shots are not all that uncommon. Partake if you would like, not mandatory. And yeah, the jacks are great. We catch lots of jack crevalle. When the jacks are on, it's like the most fun in the world. It's absolutely incredible. So, the other thing I want to point you to before we just I check and see if there's questions in the hopper here is I want to show you our complete fly assortment, and then we'll talk briefly about gear. So let me jump over to our fly assortment, and I'll jump back on screen share here in just a second. And let me share again and bump back over to the screen. So all the destinations that we host, we work really hard to procure the absolute best possible flies. Like, we're going with you. We're on the trip. We're there. We're there in person. Like, it's very important to us that we do a good job of this. And you can come, and if you go to flies and assortments and destination packages on our site, you can see, hey, here's what we recommend. And you can come down here. You can click on Baja. You can ignore the $997 price tag. That'll change once you're in here and looking at the flies. And this is what I personally recommend you take. You get airheads, a good assortment of sizes and colors. Once we have you booked, we're going to have Zoom meetings and we're going to counsel you. We're at your disposal to like go through the nitty gritty of flies and things like that. But we recommend you take some markers, browns and blacks and purples markers. And a lot of times the guides want to put a stripe or a dot on some of these flies to make absolutely certain we've got these things matched up. But you could probably survive on just 24 airheads or 18 airheads, but we recommend you take a handful of these other flies, especially the Nyaka patterns. That's tied by James Shaughnessy, the owner operator of the operation we're at. And so we recommend you take a couple of those. And then as far as like odds go, I'm going to hand this off to Eric, and he's going to talk about fishing the XFlats operation here in just a couple minutes. But as far as gear goes, it's not a huge gear set. You just need some boat shoes. I did this in the last seminar, but because I'm wearing one of my new favorite boat shoes, but you just want something with the sipe sole. I do not fish barefoot in the boat. I'm too likely to get injured, stub a toe, slip and fall, but just something with a sipe sole that can get wet from just boat splash, getting in and out of the boat and stuff like that. You don't need wading boots. You're not going to really spend much time in the water unless you're playing around or in the swimming pool. So that part of the gear set's really easy. You don't need a tremendous amount of flies because we're really focusing just on species that eat sardines and bait fish. And that's primarily jacks, dorado, roosterfish. Occasionally we get to throw out a free cast to a sailfish. That happens rarely. But even the marlin, they have gear for that. If you're going to go billfish fishing or take a long ride out to fish for tuna, your host can outline all those options. But roosterfish, dorados, and jacks, that's what you're going for. A 10 to 12 weight rod with an intermediate sinking line with a big ass reel and a whole bunch of backing. Because you hook into one of those big roosterfish that I was showing you a couple of pictures of, you're going to see a lot of that backing. And you are going to be delighted when you finally see your fly line again, as sweat is dripping down your forehead. It's an incredible thing hooking those trophy-sized roosterfish. So the gear set's pretty simple: big, strong 10 to 12 weight rods, big reels, intermediate line, and you are set as far as gear. And another good question: is it buggy at night? It can be if the wind lays down. So I recommend, throw a little bug spray in. The bugs aren't going to like really annoy you. There will be little no-see-ums that kind of bite your ankles, and I'm susceptible to that. But I usually just spray my ankles and feet with bug spray because I'm wearing flip-flops around the lodge, and you'll be fine. But you won't be swatting at anything or anything like that. It's not going to be like you're getting pestered. It's the Pacific side of Mexico is just so different than the Atlantic side. The Atlantic side's warm water. There's swamps. There's mangroves. There's shallow water flats. Baja, it's like rock, it's mountains and ocean, and the water in the Sea of Cortez is warmer, but in general, it's considered kind of a cold water, cooler water ecosystem, and it's just not buggy. And it's a desert there, so there's not much rainfall to facilitate a lot of bug growth. So if you want to do the trip, we got a few spots left for that June trip. That's the week I've historically gone. Always had super fishing. It's going to be a well-managed trip. And again, I'll be at your disposal for trip planning. If you want to book it, don't drag your feet too long. Just get booked in there. That way you can get your flights. You get good seats on the plane, all that kind of stuff. And then you can start the fun part, which is doing the planning. So, thanks for tuning into the Baja Roosterfish portion of the live show today. I'm just going to jump off, and Eric that's behind me here is going to jump on in just a second, and he's going to talk about fishing the Xcalak area in Mexico for the primarily the Grand Slam species. So give us just a second here. We'll tee it up. Be back with you in just a moment. And share it. Now we're sitting there, and they can see us, so you can even jump on the computer right now. All right. Thank you, buddy. I'll kind of hang around in case you have any challenges. Yeah, thank you.
How are we all doing, guys? Okay, so yeah, here to talk to you today about the XFlats in Xcalak, Mexico. So I was lucky enough to go down there this August with Shan, Ricky, and Craig, a few of the other guides here at Reds. Maybe you've fished with them, maybe you've traveled with them. It's a great trip, and we just wanted to make sure we got down there and learn their program, learn the fishery, and before we start hosting trips down there. So we do have a week down here in 2025. Oh, I didn't. Oh no, I muted. Perfect. We do have a week down here in 25. We're gonna go in May. Ricky's gonna host it, and don't have it currently up on the website. So if you have interest in the trip, just email me. We'll get you on a list, and we'll start booking people into this trip. Uh, Price real quick. Just since we don't have that on the website yet. So it'll be about $5,000. So definitely not one of the most expensive trips. It's a little cheaper than Cuba and some of the other ones. So it's good trip in that sense. We'll skip over the Google Earth part so we don't crash this thing, and then kind of go through some slides with you guys. This is this picture here. This is Shan, and then our guide Eric. He's taken us through the modern canal between the ocean side back here, and then we're going into the Chetumal Bay to go fishing there in the morning. So what I've got here for you is this is kind of just a map of all the named flats that they have. So the lodge is right up here, just right there. And then it sits right here on the ocean side. And then in here is Chetumal Bay, where they'll do quite a bit of fishing. The guides like to fish in there in the morning for permit. The angle of the sun, everything's just a little bit better. And then typically, if you're permit fishing, you'd come back out here and fish along the ocean in the afternoon. So the modern canal that I just showed you a picture of is right here. And then down here's the old canal where this is all Mexico, and then down here's Belize. Super narrow, takes you right through the mangroves. That was pretty cool. So for this trip, we'll fly into Tulum, Mexico. Like Joe mentioned, that's a great airport. Saves us a lot of driving. Still a bit of a drive. It takes us about 4 hours to drive from Tulum down to Xcalak. We get a van shuttle, just like in Ascension Bay, and they'll pick us up at the airport. We'll all drive together down to Xcalak. On that August trip that I did, we went. We got into Tulum about 11, and then we were to the lodge by 5. Got to settle in, have a cocktail, and then the lodge manager Toby gives you a nice little lodge orientation, and then you have dinner that first night. See, somebody chatted in. Where is this? So it's the southernmost part of the Yucatan Peninsula. Maybe at the end here we'll hop on Google Earth and show you a little bit closer once we run through the rest of this here. So got a couple charts here just showing you the kind of the better times of year to go. So really their peak season is January through May. And part of the reason for that is you just have better weather. So like when we were there in August, you can see it's a lot rainier there. We were just there for 3 days, but we were kind of glad to be leaving when we were, because there was a lot of bad weather coming in, and would have been tough fishing after that. So here's a couple pictures of the lodge. They've got some cool artwork there, some permit. This is one of the guest rooms. You can see we got all our stuff out and we're getting rigged up to go fishing. This is the view from our room here. That's the dock where the guides pick us up each day. You can see you're right there on the ocean. It's beautiful. And then they have a separate dining area and the bar here. One thing that's kind of interesting, kind of nice about this lodge is they actually have really good Wi-Fi. So you're able to make some Wi-Fi calls, call home to family, check your email if you want to do that. But I thought that was pretty nice to have. And then the fishing. So it's a primarily Grand Slam fishery. These are all fish we caught down there this year. There's Craig with a average permit. He's a pretty experienced permit fisherman, so that's why he's not caught that big of a smile there. But yeah, bonefish. That's maybe a little bit bigger than average bonefish, and nice baby tarpon there. Got that on the last day. There's certainly other species, right? Very similar to Ascension Bay. There's the jacks, barracuda. We even saw some triggerfish out there on the reef. So that was cool. You can see some of those. Brief run through on the gear. You could do this trip just with a really quality 8-weight rod and reel. And then, on the other side, right, we have the well-prepared angler. So you're going to come, if you want to target everything, an 8, 9, 10 is great. Typically with your boat partner, like me and Shan, we're fishing together primarily. We had one of our 10 weights set up with a wire leader, right? So if we saw a barracuda, didn't really matter who was up on the platform. We had that extra rod, and we're both kind of sharing that, right? And then I just have a few other things in here that I think are, definitely important, regardless if you're trying to catch everything or not. Couple different pairs of sunglasses, right? That's important for every flats trip. I bring 3 pairs, different lenses, and then you definitely want lens cloths. You want to be able to clean your sunglasses. They're going to get splash from fish. They're going to get splash from the boat ride. So everyone that's an experienced saltwater angler, they always have a ton of lens wipes, way to clean their sunglasses. Flats booties, that's important. You're going to be able to hop out of the boat, and in certain situations, the guides will anchor the boat. They'll get you out, and you'll be stalking the permit. It lets you get a closer shot. So the flats booties are nice because you can get them on and off. We'll look at a picture of a boat later, Eric's Panga boat. And he had a sea deck in it, really nice. And so we were just going barefoot in the boat, which I like. You can feel the line. You're very quiet. But like Joe mentioned, that's not always the best. So a boat shoe is nice if you don't want to go barefoot. Okay. And let's see, another question came in from Chris. Could you compare this trip to Ascension Bay, the pros and cons of each? So a couple of those guys I was on the trip with, Shan and Ricky and Craig, all of them fished Ascension Bay a ton. So one thing that's different here in Xcalak is quite a bit less pressure compared to Ascension Bay. There's only a couple lodges down here, so less pressure overall. But then another difference is it's a little bit smaller fishing area. So while there might be less lodges there, they don't have this vast fishing area. So like on our trip, we did see a few of the same flats. So for some people that might be a negative, right? If you want to be fishing a new area every day, Ascension Bay might be the better trip. We do have a lot of people that have been to Ascension Bay a ton and are just looking for a new experience. So if you've been to Ascension Bay, maybe you haven't caught a permit, Xcalak is typically going to give you more shots at permit. They are plentiful there, but tend to be a little bit smaller on average from the super experienced people that I've spent time with. So, yeah, if you have a follow-up question on that, or maybe somebody else has been to Ascension Bay wondering if this is the right trip for them, let us know. How long are the boat rides at the start and the end of the day? So that's a great question, Chris. They are shorter than an Ascension Bay. So typically we were running maybe 20 minutes out to go fishing, to start the day. And then you'd have some subsequent boat rides, but it's about 30 minutes to get into the Chetumal Bay, which, like I said, a lot of times we started our day there. A little bit better angle of the sun for fishing in there in the morning. So, and that's what the guides were calling a long run. So, pretty short runs to get out there fishing. This permit Craig actually caught uh, within sight of the lodge. So, you definitely don't have to go very far to get your day started. Yeah. Yeah. Nice and short runs. That is definitely enjoyable. Let's take a look here. Flies. So this is a really beautifully stocked fly box. This is Ricky's fly box from the trip. Had to get a picture of that. Thought that was really cool. So yeah, that Casablanca raghead. I think that got mentioned earlier in either Cuba or Mexico, but hands down the number one permit crab. That yellow-eyed white fly is just very popular. There's a couple there in his box. You can kind of tell what's the most popular fly by, there's only a couple left there, right? The bonefish butter, the guides really like that in both small sizes for the bonefish, and they were also fishing the bigger sizes for permit too. And then the mantis shrimp, got to have some of those. There's a couple mantis shrimp in there in his box. Both bead chain eyes and lead eyes on that fly. Got to have some of those. This is kind of an interesting fly here. I brought some of those down there. It looks like Ricky stole one of mine. That's called a Grand Slam crab. It's from Fulling Mill, and it's a bead chain eye fly. So a lot of these permits seemed like we're fishing them in shallower water than maybe Ascension Bay or other places. So that bead chain eye crab was really nice to have. This is a picture of Eric's Panga skiff. Really nice boat. You can see we've got room for 6 rods in the rod holders. And then this is a good shot to just kind of show you our organization in the boat. So I've got my my Sims backpack there that's waterproof. I got my sunscreen there on the outside. Get to that throughout the day. We've got our reel cases, kind of collected to where we can put them on and off our rods easy. Beer there, enjoying a beer while Shan's fishing. And then we both have our flat sneakers there. You can also just use a dry bag. Shan was using a dry bag. That's nice and simple and cheap. Let me look through my outline here, see if there's anything else I want to add here, and then let's try and get some questions. Okay, so a little bit about the guide. So, similar to some of these other communities, right? Xcalak is very small, very remote. Most of the guides have grown up there and spent their whole lives there. So, I fished with a couple of guides down there, Eric, a few days, and the other guide was Didier is his name. Both of those guys spoke really good English, but you can just kind of expect different guides are going to have a different level of English. Just like in other places in Mexico, you fish with 2 guides. So you have a junior guide who's down there on the deck with you. You can see here, this is Manny helping Shan spot fish on the deck, and then Eric would be back there on the poling platform behind me. Your guide assignments, they post those in the dining area on a whiteboard, so you'll know who your guide is. You can write down how many beers you're going to have for the day. Yeah, very organized. Let's see if we got some more questions. Are solo rooms a possibility? Yep, we can definitely upgrade you to a single room for this trip, just like some of the others. So yeah, definitely can fish as a single or have a single room. Yep. Fished out of Ambergris Key, Belize. Beautiful place, good tarpon fishing, very small bonefish, average 1 pound. Is that true of Xcalak also? So from my experience on this trip, no, that's not the case. So I would say the average bonefish there, maybe 2 pounds, is an average fish. I think that fish I showed you a picture of here, I would say that's above average. That's a three, maybe a 3.5 pound bonefish. We caught those every single day. And then also had opportunities at some truly large bonefish. Saw probably 5 or 6 that I would say are over, in that 5 to 8 pound range. Very nice bonefish. Every bit as big as some of the ones I caught in Christmas Island. So there definitely are some very nice bonefish. Plentiful permit, good amount of baby tarpon, and then depending on the time of year, like on this trip, they were starting to see the migratory tarpon come in. So you could go out into the open water out there along the reef and fish for the larger migratory tarpon. A couple of other guys that were not with us, just at the lodge there that week, did get into some bigger tarpon. So yeah, shoot me a question here, guys, if you have any more. I'd love to answer some. I guess I can just mention briefly what rods I was fishing. I took my Helios for an 8 weight down there. I think I fished a Sage R8 in the 9 weight. A couple of other guys had that rod. That's definitely a favorite here at the shop. And then one rod that I actually didn't bring, but it got to fish it a handful of times, was Loomis IMX Pro in a 10 weight. Ricky brought one of those down, and super impressed with that rod. Especially, everyone's always looking for a really good rod that's not $1,000, $1,200. So can't recommend that rod enough. So yeah, if there aren't any more questions, we can just wrap this up. But get those in there, guys, if there's something else you're wondering about. Let me just go back and make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's run through real quick. Let me pull up the map here, guys, and we'll show you here a little bit better on the location while we got some time here. Let me share that. What are the dates specifically? So in 2025, we're going to go May 24th to the 31st. So that's when we're going. Are there Jackson Barracuda too? Yes, I went over that super briefly. Didn't have a picture of them. But yes, there are Barracuda. Did get some shots at those. There was a couple days where we weren't throwing at them because we were trying to fish for permit, and saw some incredibly big Barracuda and some really big jacks. Actually, that canal that goes between, let's look at the picture here real quick, that goes between Chetumal Bay and the ocean side. So you can see it's pretty big. We were fishing through here one day and just saw a ton of big jacks, probably over 20 pounds. So yeah, definitely jacks and barracuda as well if you're interested in catching those. What's the food like? That's a great question. Good food. I think one night we had shrimp. Those were great. Carne asada one day. You get a nice appetizer when you get back from fishing. So get back from fishing, grab a drink from the bartender there in the dining area, and they'll get you a appetizer. Chat about fishing. So yeah, the food was good. Really nice tortillas, homemade tortillas every day, and variety of good salsas, and that was great. Yeah, the guides do make their own lunch every day, and they do a good job. I wouldn't say the lunches are not anything fantastic, but dinner, breakfast are very good. So this is where we're looking. So let me zoom out real quick. So we're way down here in the little town of Xcalak. So the lodge is going to be right up here. So this is the lodge right here. Guides meet you right out here on the dock. And then right in here, this is one of the lagoons. They'll take you in there for tarpon. Get to go under a really narrow bridge, go through the mangroves. So we came in through here a few days, went and fished in there. Always got into some bonefish right there. And then down here is the canal they'll take you through to get into the bay. So yeah, big man-made canal. Get in there a lot quicker. Go in here and fish the inside. Fish all these flats in the bay. And then this line right here, guys, this is the border with Belize. So you can go through this. One day we were fishing in here. Saw some sea turtles in there. That was cool. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit better view of where we're actually going to go fishing when you travel to Xcalak. How long is a typical fishing day? Like 8:30 to 4:30 with lunch on the flats. Yeah, so we had breakfast, I think 7 o'clock, get out on the water no later than 8, and then we were fishing to 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on, one day the guides kept us out pretty late, because there was a lot of permit around, and they, we had some opportunities. They wanted to capitalize on that, so they'll definitely work hard for you. But yeah, about 8 to 4:30 or so. Lunch on the boat. Yep, they'll anchor the boat up, have a good lunch, get out, use the restroom if you need to. Patagonia trip question: can you use Euro nymphing tactics on a 308 rod? What do you think, Joe?
Yeah.
Better to just dry fly fish? Yeah.
Fish are so susceptible to dry flies that you're probably going to be more effective having.
Yeah. So it sounds like from Joe's take there that in general you're going to be better off dry fly fishing. I would imagine, fishing a spring creek, right? For example, just not very conducive to Euro nymphing with the soft bottom and really spooky fish. So I guess couldn't hurt to take it along and maybe give it a shot. But yeah, I would think better to focus on dry flies and streamer fishing primarily. Any other questions, guys, here before we wrap up? Okay, well, we're glad that we had everyone join. Yeah, super excited about this trip. Shoot me an email if you want to get on, and we'll have that rolling here shortly. Yeah, I think it's a great trip, especially if you've been to some other places in Mexico, want to try something different. Do you need to stay overnight in Tulum before flying home? So we didn't. We got in there. I want to say we drove from the lodge. We probably left about 8 and got to the airport in the early afternoon and flew home at like 3 or 4. And we did get back into Seattle very late. So, if you wanted to avoid that, you definitely could overnight in Tulum, or maybe fly, like our flight went through Dallas. So maybe you could overnight in Dallas and just make the way home a little bit easier and not wear yourself out. But yeah, definitely don't have to overnight in Tulum. Okay. Super. Well, thanks, Chris. Glad you could be on. Anything else, guys? And then we'll wrap this up. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate you. If I just end, will it save?